Thank you. So, distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is really a pleasure to be among you today, and I'm delighted that I'm standing before all of you on behalf of Islamic Organization of Food Security, which is IOFS, to share a few words of the theme of this important gathering, and words cannot express how grateful I am for having been asked to be your chief guest. This gathering, meticulously arranged through the collaborative symphony of dedication and vision brought by both by International Peace College South Africa, IPSA, AFCAF South Africa, and Jam Ayatul Qurra, signifies a convergence of intellect, compassion, and shared commitment that resonates deeply within our global community. Before I get to the matter of this important meeting, allow me to share that the mission of IOFS is to safeguard sustainable food security within the countries of Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Through socio-economic development and systemic promotion of targeted programs related to agriculture, science, technology, trade, and all of this to achieve zero hunger in our member states. IOFS vision is to support member states by strengthening their capacity to respond to environmental and climate change challenges to achieve the food security globally. The vision and mission are better underscored within the IOFS 2031 strategic vision, establishing an inspiring plan with key goals for IOFS role in OIC member states for security success. Ladies and gentlemen, as I address to you today, I'm acutely aware of the magnitude of this platform, a stage where minds convene, ideas flourish, and solutions spring forth. This conference transcends geographical boundaries, uniting us in a common quest to unravel the intricate threads of the food security challenges that weave through the tapestry of our world. Together, we stand at the precipice of transformative change, armed with the knowledge and the collective determination to translate that knowledge into meaningful action. In a world marred by intricate challenges, the issue of food security looms large as an imperative concern that transcends borders and affects all corners of the globe. Nowhere is this stark reality more evident than in Africa, a continent brimming with potential yet grappling with the persistent spectrum of hunger and malnutrition. The dire state of food security in Africa compels us to act urgently and collectively. I'm heartened by the unwavering dedication of the IOFS to its steadfast mission. Particularly noteworthy are our endeavors through the flagship of Africa Food Security Initiative, AFCI. This initiative is a testament to our commitment to alleviating the plight of millions gripped by food insecurity. By centering our efforts on sustainable agricultural practices, fostering local capacity, and supporting innovative solutions, the IOFS is unwavering in its aim to empower African OIC member states to achieve self-sufficiency in food production. The AFCI program stands on a beacon of hope, offering a comprehensive framework to address the multifaceted challenges of food security through capacity building, knowledge sharing, and technology transfer, while nurturing a culture of resilience that promises to augment agricultural productivity and enhance agricultural policies, economic growth, and social stability across our esteemed African member states. Ladies and gentlemen, in this noble pursuit, the paramount significance of South Africa cannot be emphasized enough. With a tapestry woven from a rich historical heritage and a resolute commitment to progress, this nation stands a potential catalyst poised to steer the course of food security across Africa. The variegated mosaic of its agricultural landscapes, technological acumen, and steadfast tradition of collaborative engagement positions South Africa as a beacon radiating innovative solutions meticulously designed to confront African nations' distinctive challenges. At this juncture, we are happy to note that South Africa stands ready to continue forging partnerships with esteemed organizations such as IOFS and other specialized institutions, leveraging collective expertise and resources to drive transformative change. By sharing best practices, facilitating knowledge exchange, and promoting sustainable agriculture, South Africa can significantly contribute to the realization of our shared vision. A continent where no one goes to bed hungry, where food security is not a distant dream but a tangible reality. It is important to note that we enjoy a wonderful relationship with the Embassy of South Africa in Astana, Kazakhstan, to which we became partners in organizing and successfully convening the celebration of Africa Day on 25th of May this year. Distinguished participants, I am pleased to highlight specific initiatives that underscore our African commitment. The IOFS has embarked on groundbreaking projects such as Water Management Integrated Plan in Niger, designed to address the intricate interplay between water resources and agricultural productivity. By harnessing advanced strategies and cutting-edge technologies, we aim to unlock the true potential of water management, ensuring that every drop counts in nourishing the arable lands. This endeavor is a testament to our belief in the symbiotic relationship between sustainable resource management and enhanced food production. Furthermore, the Mauritania Wheat Project is an emblem of our commitment to fortifying food value chain. This initiative sets the stage for a self-sufficient Mauritania in a region where arable land is a precious resource. By empowering local farmers with the knowledge, resources, and expertise, we pave the way for increased wheat production, reducing import dependency, and enhancing food security. This project showcases our resolute dedication to providing aid and facilitating enduring change through capacity building and sustainable practices. Additionally, we are also partnering with Nigeria to create a meat hub, a practical tool aimed in advancing the meat processing industry and enhancing its value chain. This hub isn't limited to meeting Nigeria requirements alone. It is designed to benefit the entire western part of Africa, and it is promoting self-reliance in this region of Africa. Finally, within the framework of the AFCI, African Food Security Initiative, the IFS is poised to execute a series of impactful activities across its African member states. Notably, an African Investment Business Forum in Djibouti on the 7th and 8th of December this year is on the horizon, with a dedicated focus on promoting investment and partnership to amplify the growth of the livestock industry and its value chain. Using this opportunity, I would like to invite our esteemed business partners from South Africa to be part of this very important gathering, which is African Agro-Business Forum, as I mentioned in the beginning of December this year. I just came from Mozambique, where we implemented a significant cassava training program with the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to empower local communities with the vital skills and enhance cassava production techniques. These endeavors reflect our unwavering commitment to equipping our African member states with the tools and knowledge they need to flourish in food security and agricultural advancement. Distinguished participants, before I conclude, I wish to reiterate our commitment to fostering inclusive societies, empowering every individual, and ensuring equitable access to opportunities for all Africans. Together, we can build a brighter future, free from poverty, inequality, political unrest, and food insecurity. As we all have the same vision for this extraordinary continent, let us honor the vision of African unity as epitomized by the African Union. Let us embrace the spirit of Ubuntu, recognizing that our prosperity is interconnected with the collective well-being of the entire continent. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the International Peace College South Africa, AFCAF South Africa, and Jamiatul Qurra for their constant commitment to pursuing meaningful dialogue and collaboration on this vital issue. IOFS is ready and willing to join forces with all stakeholders, working in tandem to reshape food security across Africa. With unwavering conviction, I believe that our collective efforts have the potential to create a future where prosperity and sustenance are available everywhere, erasing the spectrum of hunger from our shared history. Thank you all for your kind attention. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I just want to acknowledge members of the diplomatic corps that have arrived, firstly. And then secondly, there's also a Mauritian delegation. Brother Dawood is part of that delegation, so we want to acknowledge their presence here as well. I now call upon the CEO of OCAF to present the next session. Chief Mandla Mandela is having problems linking up with us. So Zainul Abidin, will you come forward, please?
I'm sorry, just for the slight intervention. My name is Muhammad Harun. Let me quickly just introduce our important sort of guest also who's joining us on this panel. Professor Julian May is the director for the Center of Food Security at the University of Western Cape that Professor Anes basically mentioned early on. The important aspect also of our professor is that he is the chair for the UNESCO chair for African food systems. So he's been leading a project. It's between UWC, University of Western Cape, and the University of Pretoria. So he's been leading an important project continentally. And of course, being based in the Western Cape means much to us because it's an important area of focus, as we have just heard from our honored keynote speaker. So I think with that, I hand it over to my colleague and Professor May, will you ask?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honorable guests, participants, honorable speakers, a very, very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for attending this wonderful initiative of food security, and a very warm welcome to Professor Julian May, who is going to give us his address as well, and thanks to Muhammad Harun for giving that brief introduction. So I think without much ado, we're going to call upon Professor Julian May to address us. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues and distinguished guests. I feel we're at the stage of the program where I can now safely say all protocol observed, because I think there are a number of very important guests in the room. So thank you very much for inviting me to do this presentation. As was mentioned, I head a research center which is based at the University of Western Cape and also the University of Pretoria. It's termed a Center of Excellence in Food Security. These are one of 16 centers of excellence that were set up by our National Department of Science and Innovation and the National Research Foundation. We are a second generation, so we've been around for 10 years now. Other centers have been around for about 20 years. And our sister organizations are in science metrics, the measurement of the impact of research in communicable disease, which had much to do during the COVID epidemic, and people may know that Professor Salim Karim, who was essentially our lead person in the COVID pandemic, is the head of that Center of Excellence. And then there's a Center of Excellence in Human Development. Now, I had an interesting time preparing for this presentation. It's a topic I know well, having been involved in it for quite some time. But on Monday, I managed to reverse my car over my laptop. And fortunately, the computer itself works, but the monitor is broken. It's an Apple, so that says something about Apples. But I wound up having to do this presentation on my telephone, like a teenager. So if there are any glitches, please forgive me, but it was I learned quite a lot. I've titled my talk, Key Narratives from the Rapid Food System Assessments for Eastern and Southern Africa. And I'll need to give you a little background there. In 2022, the UN system convened a food system summit in New York. Many countries of the world participated. South Africa was one of those. Our center was asked to prepare what was they termed a rapid food system assessment for South Africa, along with 50 other countries who were given the same privilege. So this was a very quick overview, a very structured overview of what were the key sustainability questions facing South Africa, and then what were the policy levers. And what was interesting for our academics, we were told we could have only 4 key sustainability questions and only 2 levers for each one. If you work with academics, you know that we don't work like that. We like to have lots and lots of nuances and different sub-themes, but we were restricted. This year, we were asked by the FAO to try and bring together all of the rapid food system assessments for Eastern and Southern Africa. So about 20 countries. And I felt this was a good base to share with you at this conference. It's work very much in progress, but it will give you some sense of what a significant part of Africa is facing when it comes to their food systems and thus the food security that they experience. I'm pushing. Where should I face? I can use that. I'll use the menu. Okay, so first, I've described what the Center of Excellence is. Centers of Excellence are actually quite unusual creations of the Department of Science and Innovation. We work through others. We collaborate with almost every university in the country. We collaborate with universities and research institutions from other countries. We also work with non-governmental organizations, and we now have collaborators with government departments, particularly with local municipalities. So there are about 28 institutions at the moment networked across South Africa, across Africa, and into Europe. We have some collaborators in Asia. We are collaborating with researchers in China, and now most recently in Singapore. There are about 100 researchers at any one time working on different projects, and we work through our postgraduate students, and there are about 130 at the moment, students and research fellows that are engaged in different activities. Food security is a very broad concept, and we try and serve as a catalyst to push new ideas along in a very wide range. So some of our work is on molecular biology, trying to understand how to breed better plants, how to take advantage of the characteristics of plants. Some of our work is in economics, trying to come up with better food systems, better ways in which markets operate, trying to understand how people access food and what prevents them from accessing food. Some of our work is in dietetics, so we're looking at the nutritional value of food, how the lifestyles that people have to absorb food appropriately. We've even done work in the humanities. Some of that has also concerned things such as the role of Islamic and other faith-based organizations in meeting the needs of people through their activities. So a quite wide range of activities. As I say, we try and be a catalyst and then Projects may spin off, and that project which I told you about, where we focused on the role of faith-based organizations, that's now established itself as a Center for Critical Food Studies, and that now links the University of KwaZulu-Natal, UWC, and the University of Pretoria. Just to start, and I hope that the slides are clear, let's just start with thinking about what is a food system. I mean, there's been a discussion already around food security, but from the FAO's perspective, a food system has a number of particular components. I'll start at the bottom, the outcomes. What do we expect of our food system? So food security is one of the things we expect of a food system, that people have enough healthy food that is safe, that is nourishing, that's affordable, and which they like. It suits their culture, it suits how they want to interact with food. But it's not the only outcome of a food system. As we know in the Western Cape, particularly, food systems are vital sources of employment for our population. So we also need to think, does our food system deliver jobs? Are they decently paid jobs, and are they safe jobs? So that's an output of our food system. Then we need to think about the impact that the way in which we produce food has on the environment. And that excellent video already mentioned the need to nurture the environment, to make sure that our production is sustainable. So we can produce enough food in this world, but we often do it in ways which are actually unsustainable. At some point, we are degrading our soils, and we are using chemicals which essentially belonged in the Industrial Revolution. They have no place in a modern world. And then lastly, food is very much about seeking equality, about balance. We don't want an environment where there are people who have access to any food they want and others are going through garbage cans to find the food that they need. So balance, how our food system balances, is also important. Food systems, typically when most people work on food systems, they talk about the core food system. That's the value chains that you've already heard mentioned. The different ways in which we produce the food that we will consume. The link between the fertilizer company, the farmer, and ultimately down to the consumer. So that's the core food system that is important. There are also many institutions that are involved in that can influence that food system. IOFS is exactly one of those institutions. The faith-based organizations that I spoke of earlier are also so. But then so is the Table Grape Association and Agri-SA. They are also institutions that can influence for the good, but not always. And finally, there are the big drivers, the things that make our food system change. An example here, again, already mentioned, the impact of climate change, the global uncertainty that we face, the increasing population and the movement of that population. All those are the drivers of the food system. Now we think about, is there such a thing as an African food system? After all, there's 50 countries thereabouts in the continent of Africa. Can we think of a food system that is uniquely African? Well, there are reasons why, and I've put some of these up here. Some of it is that the continent as a whole has a shared history of colonialization, and that has meant that we have particular relationships with particular countries. I think that's changing now as countries are now starting to see other allies, other partners. And again, perhaps we may be looking at that kind of change taking place in this very room. There are also there's a shared purpose that we have on the continent to rebuild, to build new infrastructures. And recent agreements about global trade, about trade movements and free trade movements are exactly one of those ways in which Africa is now rediscovering itself and finding new ways of operating. So because of the reasons on the screen, we would argue that there is such a thing as an African food system that is different from an American or a British or an Asian food system. And we need to recognize that and think how to capture on those strengths. Just to get then into the core of this, often as we see depicted on the magazine, on international magazines, Africa is often represented either as a basket case. It's a disaster, everything's going wrong. And every now and again, people notice that things are going well, and then we'll say positive things on the front page of The Economist or Times magazine. But actually something is going pretty well in Africa, and that is our ability to produce food. So this is the value of agricultural output in Eastern and Southern Africa. Other than a dip around 2008, it's been growing very steadily and very well. So we are, in fact, in a state where Africa is now producing more food than we need. And that's quite remarkable, because it says that we are not, in fact, dependent upon others to provide us with food. But there are structural problems, which I'll talk about now. So the food production index, which is a measure that the FAO uses, has increased at around 12% since 2000. Another way of thinking about the food is what energy do we get from consuming that food, typically measured in the number of calories that you consume each day. Well, dietary energy supply is an index, and that's increased by 32% since 1985. So not only are we producing more, we're producing food that is of value to us to be able to consume. If you just take three countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Africa, the value of agricultural food production is over $60 million in 2020. But, and this is the interesting thing, despite the fact that we produce more food than we need, Africa continues to import 40% of its food. And the ratio between what we import in terms of food compared to everything else that we import is the highest in the world. So we are producing enough, but we have to import. I'll come to why in a second. In terms of food security, again, we've actually made progress. One measure of food security is developed by the FAO. That's a measurement of undernutrition. So are we consuming enough calories? That's actually declined from 31% in 2004 to 22% in 2015. It increased again during COVID. And again, that's of significance. We are also vulnerable. When things go wrong, it affects our ability to feed ourselves. Nonetheless, 140 million people are undernourished, which is a staggering number. A measure which I favor a lot is the height of children compared to their age. And it's referred to as stunting for those who might not have come across this concept. Children react very quickly when things go wrong, when someone loses their job, when there's a drought, whatever, or when there's a pandemic. Child stunting has declined from 44%, but only to 41%. So we are not making progress with our children, even though we're producing enough food. And here's the last one on food security. It's not just about not having enough food, it's whether the food is appropriate. In Eastern and Southern Africa, 28% of adults are overweight, 11% are obese. This isn't an issue of concern about what people look like. This is a concern that this means that this group are at risk of non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension. So and these are expensive illnesses, both for the family and also for the state. So that's a twist on our food situation that goes beyond thinking of only people not having enough food. As I said, the FAO has this quite structured process and has pushed us then to think of, if we could reflect on all this information, what are the key narratives? What are the key stories that we should be concerned about, and where we can say somebody can do something about this? I put up a few here, which again, I think we have emerged as being particularly important when thinking about food systems and food security in Africa. The first is the food system paradox that I've just described to you, which I've repeated a few times. We produce enough, and yet we still have these very poor outcomes, and we import a significant amount of our food. Now, some of that is because of countries like South Africa, who export significant amounts of food. Those grapes, those oranges, all of that food that brings us much needed for forex, but nonetheless we export the food. And we're not the only country in Africa doing that. Kenya does that, Zambia does that, multiple countries are growing enough to be able to export, and particularly also to high-end niche markets in the UK. An example is, which is a very popular foodstuff, is green beans, grown in abundance in Zambia, flowed on a plane to Heathrow and in the London supermarket the next morning. So we have that paradox which we need to think, how can we identify changes to our policies, changes to the way in which we do things that can make sure that more of that food stays behind and more of the appropriate food stays behind. The second narrative is one of low productivity. Although there are outstanding examples in Africa of farms that are producing at levels which are equivalent to Europe or to the USA or to Asia, we are nonetheless generally characterized by low productivity in terms of the amount of food we grow and the amount of land and the resources that we use. Also worrying is that a part of that legacy of colonialism has meant that we have low diversification in the foods that are grown in Africa. Many countries are reliant on one or two crops. An example is Eswatini, former Swaziland, which is heavily dependent on the growing of sugar, which it exports to South Africa. Yet it's a country with very high levels of undernutrition. In South Africa, we are heavily dependent upon maize. The same is true in other countries in Africa. So we have insufficient diversification, meaning that we are not growing a wide enough range of food. For South Africa, one of our big concerns is what's going to happen to our wheat. As climate change takes place, as the next drought starts to become imminent, what is going to happen with our wheat production, because we're a bread-eating country now. So that's a concern that we have to think about. Throughout Africa, a key narrative is that there are tremendous inequalities. Women face barriers to be able to gain access to land, to be able to gain access to markets, and particularly those international markets. We are probably in a more fortunate position in South Africa compared to many of our neighbors because of the legislations that we have, the legislation that we've adopted. But in other countries, some countries in Africa, women are still not entitled to own land. So it's not only issues of culture and tradition, it's legal. The same as with youth. We're a youthful continent, and yet young people, the research has shown, young people across the continent find it very difficult to access land. We have a compromised food system resilience. Food systems need to be able to be resilient, to to react when things go wrong. But as COVID showed us, when we are confronted with a crisis like that, our system starts to crumble. Communities went hungry, even though there was food sitting in shops. Governments adopted an appropriate policy. An example in South Africa, we stopped informal traders. Yet poor communities rely heavily upon street traders to be able to source their food, but the traders weren't allowed on the street. So our food system resilience is important. The continent is also characterized by large numbers of displaced people. Perhaps through war in some instances. Much of parts of East Africa, Uganda, South Sudan, countries like that are affected by war, but also by economic necessity, people moving in search of work because there's nothing available. And worryingly, what we're now starting to see are displaced people who are climate change refugees. They've left because of the climate has changed so much in the areas where they lived that they can no longer make a livelihood. They're no longer sure that they will have clean water. So that's another factor that is important. The last which I just want to pick up on, and I think I was given 50 minutes, I hope I'm more or less on time, is the fact that we also have adopted inadequate policies, and sometimes and frequently there's inadequate implementation when we have good policies. Again, across the board, we can identify policies which are favoring particular crops and thus limiting our diversification. Many countries subsidize or have supported maize production to the cost of other things that could have been grown. And I've already given you the example of the decision in South Africa to prevent informal trading. Now, these are the kinds of policies which are not grounded on how our food system actually takes place. In South Africa, we have an excellent series of policies around access to water, but they're not implemented properly. Water remains still to this day very much controlled by small groups of people and denied access, and people who are new farmers do not have access. I was asked just to mention some of our research, and as I've said, it's a very wide range, and I thought when I read the brief and the other presentations, I'm going to focus on one particular area just to give you a sense of what it is that we're trying to do. So this is work that's been undertaken by colleagues of mine who are food scientists and plant scientists. One concerned with how do we generate techniques to be able to process food so that it lasts longer, so that it's more nourishing, and the other group focusing on the characteristics of plants. Both groups are focused on what we called neglected crops or indigenous crops. So these are crops that have been grown in Africa, but there's been very little research done on them, and largely they are being displaced by crops like maize, which comes from the Americas. And as a result, we've simply not done enough investigation on the ability and the characteristics of these plants. So that's a list of the ones that we are looking at. We're looking at the millets, the sorghums, an extremely healthy food. We're looking at African legumes such as bambara and marama bean. Again, forms of groundnut, which we find are potentially more healthy than what we are eating at the moment. And not only are my colleagues looking at these particular plants, they recognize that these plants are very well adapted to the African climate, far better than wheat, far better than maize. So the colleagues who work on molecular biology have identified what are the characteristics of those plants that enable them to survive heat or drought or very high levels of salt. So that is what we're trying to work towards there. They assure me that as we find this out, we can adapt even our existing food crops, the wheat and the cereals, to mimic the behavior of our indigenous crops. It's quite an exciting area. I heard the magic word investment a little while ago. This is an area where investment would be important, because these are crops that are grown throughout the continent, which at this stage are not being fully exploited, and which are potentially new directions in which we can move. My colleagues tell me that, to go back to bread, the key thing is if we can have a healthy, long-lasting loaf of bread that doesn't rely on wheat. That's his mission. And so he bakes. One of his things is baking. His research involves baking different kinds of bread and trying different kinds of flour and ways of preparing the bread to be able to come up with a bread which would meet those characteristics: cheap, healthy, long-lasting. Colleagues, that's as much as I thought I had time for. I could stand here and talk about each research project in detail, but if there's a question and answer time, I could perhaps do that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. May. I think this has really been very insightful for me, and I'm sure for every one of you, to give us quite a good overview of what's happening with the food crisis and the food situation in Africa. I think without much ado, let's make this a little bit more interactive. And if there are any questions, I'm sure Dr. May would be very, very willing to answer those questions. Anybody? Perhaps, if I may start, I'd like to know the role of faith-based organizations you mentioned. What has been their kind of involvement in this area? And also, perhaps the issue about, current situation, for example, in South Africa, and the emigration of farmers that have actually left the country, and how that has actually created a kind of deficit in food here in South Africa. Or perhaps even in other areas may have gained out of this situation as well.
So, is the microphone working?
Yes.
So, faith-based organizations were identified as playing several roles that were important. The one is the direct provision of food aid, and many organizations are doing that. But it goes beyond that. There are also ways in which people share food. I live in the community of Burkap, and the sharing of food each day is really very, very noteworthy. And I think it's part of a faith value. I've lived in other areas where that faith value has not been present, and people who are going through garbage are chased away rather than someone putting the food to one side. So it was about the value system was important. The second thing is that Faith was also recognizing how, and again, this was specifically during periods of fasting, how to manage the health consequences of fasting, and to ensure that people who are have particular health issues are able to manage the period of fast. So those were the different ways in which it worked. So it's not only about the provision of assistance or altruism, it was also the value system that a faith-based organization promoted. On the immigration of farmers, and what's striking when we now look at the profile and what the skill set of modern farmers really is, very successful farms do not necessarily require the entrepreneur to be a farmer. The entrepreneur needs to be a business person, needs to understand logistics, needs to understand international trade. And I think it's that loss which is more worrying, because then it's not just a farmer moving out of South Africa to go and find a farm somewhere else, but you're losing the skill set for us to be a competitive nation of farmers. And when we lose people like that, they could move to any sector. They're very mobile. So they could just as easily have done their degree in logistics in South Africa, and rather than work in the table grape industry, they moved to Australia and they are about the logistics of building motor cars. So that's where I think we are having worrying problems. And I think some of the things that we're seeing with the issues that we had with the Port of Cape Town last year was exactly where we are starting, the resource base of people who can do these kinds of engineering, logistic type activities are becoming thin. I'm less worried about the farmers. In fact, I believe we have a large enough population able to farm. The farm workers, the farm managers, all of those who did not have access to land. I think we could replace the farmers more easily than we can replace this niche that I'm talking about.
So what's the kind of future inputs of new kind of farmers and also students who are actually studying towards agricultural science and that are are we kind of addressing this issue about the gender and youth inequality?
I think we are certainly, and I can talk about UWC specifically, where we are now in the process of introducing a new degree in sustainable agriculture. And it's interesting because UWC does not have a test farm. We're not like Stellenbosch or the University of Pretoria. We've not had that. And it's probably to our advantage, because the idea of sustainable agriculture is not necessarily going to be trained on a field. It's more likely to be trained in a greenhouse or in a vertical garden or in a laboratory. That's where the new knowledge is being built.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're running out of time. Perhaps one or two questions there.
Professor, you spoke about the new genetically orientated bread. We're moving from wheat-based to some of the other crops.
Assalamu alaikum, Azhar Wari from Salam Foundation. You spoke about the crop change in the bread constituency. Will that fall under genetically modified, bread in the end of the day? And then who does that belong to? Will it be democratized and farmers and people then have access to that seed? Or is it going to just follow the same road of the other Western companies where in the end of the day you have farmers committing suicide because they're stuck onto the GMO system?
May I take that question?
Yeah.
And that is an excellent question. And to go back again to when I said we were looking into the work of, we involved people from the humanities to help us think through some of the issues. One of the first things we asked our colleagues in humanities is, from the perspective of theology, what is the role of humans in doing this kind of work? And they were asking the question, and this was, I think, particularly with I think in many faiths, are we doing the work of God when we try and breed new plants? Or are we guilty of a sin of sloth if we know how to, but do not do it? It was very interesting because we then confronted our scientists with this kind of discussion. Their response was, what they are doing is they regard genetic modification, what was traditionally done, actually as quite a trivial use of the science. Essentially, what many of those breedings were doing were preparing a plant to be sprayed with a chemical, rather than to learn from the plant. So my colleague says, the molecular biologist describes himself as learning from the plant. And as he put it to me, every plant has these innate abilities, but in their DNA, it's not always activated. And like with our DNA, everybody has the innate ability to have blonde hair or to have black hair or to have white hair. But the DNA switches are not necessarily activated for that to happen. And so that is what they're doing rather than the genetic modification or bringing together unlike plants. It's learning from the plant itself. Why that's important is that exactly democratizes the science that you're talking about. The kinds of technologies that are being used are inexpensive. They can be done at any university. UWC is by no means the wealthiest university in South Africa, and we are able to do this kind of work with the technologies that we have available. So that gets you out of this trap that the companies will own the IP. We certainly have a policy in our Center of Excellence. Anything that we breed, we call it copylefted. You can do anything you want with it, but you can't sell it.
Okay, thank you. Let's have Abed there. Abed?
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
By the way, we've only got 5 minutes left, so please keep your questions short.
I would say that from my side, I would greet the professor and the panel. I represent the Alim Dad Foundation, and I just want to bring this whole discussion to another level. If you listen to our discussions, we're talking at university levels, what have you. As we talk now, people are hungry. We need to go to ward level. If you look at South Africa, you've got people staying in wards who are hungry. Our foundation has been involved, and we have 40 farmers, which we call the one home, one garden. One school, one garden. One clinic, one garden. One hospital, one garden. From an Islamic perspective, we're going to one masjid, one garden. One imam, one garden. One muazzin, one garden. And I can tell you right now, Prof, all what you spoke about is excellent. It helps us to enhance. But as we talk, we need to make sure that the one home, one garden, there's criteria. As the program director, I haven't got time, maybe we can engage. The 40 farmers that we have graduated them out of poverty in partnership with agriculture, one. Two, when you run their gardens in the back of their houses, which is 20 square meters, we have got a whole criteria how we operate to make sure that they can eat from their garden, they can sell from the garden, and also have stores which we have arranged for. It's called One Home, One Garden Food Security. So we tell the supermarket, please, the excess cabbages, excess beetroots, can you please leave it in your store and sell it for this specific lady to graduate out?
I'm going to have to.
So having said that, I want to say that, yes, I want to say that we need to come back to the ground and have an engagement on that one.
Okay, Jazakallah, I think that's excellent. Ismail?
I'll ask a final question. That, you talked about what they call it, what was the word again? Yeah, genetically modified. Now, Monsanto is doing genetically modified seeds, and they have Terminator technology. Now, what's the difference between yours and theirs? Because theirs are destroying farms all over the world. Because the minute a farmer uses their technology, they have to buy the seeds from them, which is very expensive. So is your genes, genetically modified bread, going to be something like that? Because isn't that unhealthy? That's all I want to know.
Well, let me just firstly reinforce the view that we need to be working on the ground. So one of the things we are doing in our center is we've adopted what we've termed a place-based approach to our research, which means we actually embed our researchers in a number of places. At the moment, we have an agreement with the Breda Valley municipality, and so we are working in those communities. The idea is to understand what will work, what are the risks, and then to be able to communicate via the South African Local Government Association to other local authorities to say, this is what you can do as a model. We're doing similar work also in the Eastern Cape and Matatiele. Then on the genetic engineering, and just to clarify, we're not about to launch a genetic engineered bread. What we're trying to do there is to see whether if we add in other kinds of flours, like flowers that are ground from these crops that I've described, like sorghum, like millet, how can we make a bread that's more nourishing and not reliant upon wheat? We're not going as far at this stage of trying to breed a new wheat. But what is different, Monsanto, let's take the Monsanto example. Many of Monsanto's crops are bred to withstand their herbicide. So they're bred so that you can spray Roundup on them and the plant won't die. And as I said, that's a quite trivial use of the knowledge. What we're trying to do is understand what it is about a plant that allows it to survive very high heat, and then find out how to adapt the plant, so adapt other plants in the same way that they have the same characteristics. And like I said, these are innate to the plant. What Monsanto does, which is an unnecessary thing to do, in addition to making that plant able to withstand Roundup, they make that plant sterile, that seed sterile. And that, as long as you don't do that, then a farmer can always plant the seed, wait for it, harvest it, and grow again. And that's the commitment which we have.
Jazakallah. Unfortunately, that's all that we have time for now. And let's just give Dr. May a good round of applause. Thank you very much.
My name is Dawood Tablanche, and I will act as the chair of this session. So I am the CEO of the International Peace College South Africa, the first accredited and registered private Islamic institution in South Africa to be accredited with the Council of Higher Education and registered with the Department of Higher Education and Training. Our session will take us up to 1 p.m. inshallah, when lunch will be served in the main hall and the work can be performed at the masjid. We have two presenters in the session, and each presenter will be allocated 15 minutes to do the presentation, and thereafter we'll have a Q&A session inshallah. Our first presenter is Professor Muniba Isaacs. Professor Muniba Isaacs is with the Institute for Poverty, Land and Agrarian Studies, PLAAS+, at the University of Western Cape. She is the academic manager for postgraduate teaching, coordinator for accredited short course training on the political economy of land governance in Africa, and on living landscapes in action, interrogating biodiversity and social justice in Southern Africa. Prof. Isaacs' current research focus is small-scale fisheries management and rights individual transfer quotas. We would welcome Professor Muniba Isaacs and invite her to do her presentation on NGOs and food security. We call Professor Muniba to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for the invitation to speak at this forum. It is a real honor for me to speak here. I am a child of the sea. Both my grandparents, my father was a fisherman in Simonstown, and my grandfather was my grandmother was also a fisherwoman selling fish from Simonstown. So I feel I have salt in my veins more than blood. So it's I've been asked to speak about NGOs and food security case studies, but I also, like my former colleague Julian, who I don't see here now, you know, we change our titles to suit the work that we are doing. So I'm going to speak about mainly small-scale fisheries, fish itself, food security, and why it should be at the center of our food systems and our debates. So I have, my talk is around 4 main points. The importance of this small-scale fisheries to sustainable food, to sustainable use, food and nutritional security. So when we're talking about food, we cannot talk just about food in absence of the nutrition. It is very important when we speak about food, we need to include nutrition security. It's not just about filling the tummy, it's filling the tummy with the necessary nutrition. If you look at the malnutrition that we have in South Africa and in Southern Africa more particular, I'm also going to touch on the role of civil society organizations in securing food, livelihoods for small-scale fisheries based on a policy-driven process, but also a lot of advocacy and activism. I'm going to try to clarify the difference between food security, food sovereignty, maybe a new concept for many of you, but also more and more we are leaning as academics towards a food system approach. All of this we cannot talk about this if we don't talk about what is the justice, the climate, and also the crises, whether it's food, economic. One thing that people used to tell me in fishing communities is that the lockdown was no different to us because we feel we're in a permanent state of lockdown. If it's not the crime around us, it's also the issues around joblessness and food. So I work in communities, I come from the communities, so I'm not going to take any questions about where my work is rooted. It's rooted in communities. It's working alongside the coast. I have been to all South African coastal communities around the 3,000 kilometers. More particularly, my work is focused on the West and the Northern Cape and the Southern Cape of South Africa, because that is the most productive region of fisheries, but it's also close to home. So civil society in South Africa are not quiet. There's a lot of activism, there's a lot of work, and if you look at, there's also a lot of protests around, you know, getting notice, articulating their rights. And if you're from Cape Town, you know about the quotas, you know about the kreef, you know about the snoek, you know about, you know, maybe bokkums, maybe bokkom butter, maybe not, but you know exactly what to make of the snoek and the kreef, and it's part of our culture and our tradition when in Cape Town. So, and it's an important source of proteins. So small scale and fishes are part of Cape Town, and they were overlooked by policy post-democracy. And they went into a process of challenging the new fisheries policy post-democracy, and they were also part of drafting a new policy for South Africa. a key part of that thread throughout was food security. We are doing this as a basis for our human right to food and a right to livelihood. We can only catch as much as our body allows us to catch, and the boat. If we overcatch, then that boat, we will risk our lives, and some do overcatch and risk their lives, and many of them also lose their lives. So small-scale fisheries make sustainable sense. It makes sense in terms of the climate, and it makes sense in terms of you get enough for food, but you also get enough to sell to make a living. And they know that very well. So the small-scale fishers were also organized at a local level, at a national level, at a regional level, and also international level. And here you can see the voluntary guidelines of the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, basically looked at a responsible governance. How do we manage this? And these fishers are connected all over, are connected with other groups all over the world. They also not only want to just protest, they also want to say that we want to be part of the decision making. We want to make sure that our needs and our priorities are part of the policy, and they were part of the policy. But that is just the first part of the story. Policy is paper. The implementation is often the problem, and often you can't eat paper. You need it for a livelihood. You need, and even when we're talking about capacity building, you come in, you provide certificates, but I can't do anything because I need to work. I need the food. I need a livelihood. I need my food. Those are the two things that they constantly mention in the 30 years that I've been working in this sector. So from 2007, this is the process of activism. They used the social and economic justice movements in small-scale fisheries create this policy. It is now 2023. The Western Cape is still being finalized. So there's also an injustice when we talk about how rights are being allocated. And I think this is an important issue to look into. So why food security in relation to fisheries? It's direct and indirect form of cash, revenue and employment. It's an issue of ecological sustainability. Small-scale fishers know that when they are fishing, they need to fish. They need to know that they need to leave the breeding stock. They need to leave the smaller fish, and they need to target the bigger fish. They know exactly that that is what they need to do. So ecological sustainability is part of the core. But the narrative around small-scale fisheries, not only in South Africa, but also on the continent, is that they are illegal, informal, and poachers. So they criminalize their livelihoods and their food, and that is a big challenge. Even if it is formalized, they still looked at, oh, there's just a whole group of poachers. And there are some poachers in Hout Bay and the group of poachers up the West Coast and the Southern Cape. There are many, but not all of them. Let's not be romantic. So we have to be trade-offs and interaction within the sector. And I have been in a lot of debates with the large-scale fisheries sector. You know, because what I've also found that what fishermen catch, they might not have the network to market. They might not have, fish is not like gold. You need to get rid of it sooner. You can't save it under your bed for a rainy day. it will start smelling. So it makes sense for you to get rid of it. And because of that particular factor, people are incredibly vulnerable to middlemen, langanas, to come in and say, we'll give you cash for your fish, but we will bring you down as much as possible. Around the corner, they sell it for 3 times the price they just bought it from the fishermen. So it's very important when we look at the food that we eat, we need to look at the system, that the system must include the fisher, the value chain, and how that fish is particularly sold. It is also, more and more we're talking about fish meal, and we're also talking about, this is now food that is used, nutritious food that is used for feeding chicken feed, making cat food, making to grow other fish, which is aquaculture. So that is what nutritious food. And then on the other hand, as Julian mentioned, the inequalities, you sit with the huge inequalities where people don't have enough food to eat, don't have nutritious food to eat. So I think it is important that we link that. It is also important that small-scale fishes compared to large-scale fishes have little post-harvest loss or waste. If you come from a fishing community, that community will tell you we use everything of the fish. We use the bones, we eat the head, and who of you eat the eye of the snook, So those are, I see a few hands up. Others might be a bit, but it is important that the whole snook is being eaten. And once you eat the bones, like the small fish, you get the micronutrients that I will get in. But the food security concept is limited. It is a right to food, so it's a legal concept, but it's also very technical. So we also need to expand that food security. Doesn't mean that the fisher who catch the fish necessarily get the best deal. And I think it is important that that must be part of the conversation. So I was part of the Committee of Food Security, and we developed this report in 2014, and we unpacked what fish mean, not only for South Africa, but around the world. And more people are moving away from other animal protein because of the problems around and eating other animal protein. They want to eat more fish. And what does that mean? A lot of the fish that people used to eat are not available anymore. So the fish you used to eat is not available for you to eat, and somebody else who have a lot more money and are in another part of the world are eating the fish that our fishermen used to eat. So this is just the stats, and I'm going to move closer, faster. So a study that we've done during COVID is also to look at 3 case studies, one South Africa, Tanzania, and Ghana. And we looked at the food systems, and we include fish and fresh produce. So we knew with the lockdown in South Africa, we sat with a huge problem of people not able to go out and get food. And a huge part of our population, they are actually going out and make work informally and get that money, buy some food and bring it home. And because they couldn't do that, that was a huge problem. But even a bigger problem were the foreigners who were undocumented and didn't want to be seen initially. They were even more vulnerable because there were very little money for them. So South Africa's food system is the most unequal. And that we found in COVID, that there was an oversupply of snook during COVID, but that snoek didn't go to poorer communities. It went into big fishing companies to freeze it so that they can make a profit later. So I think it's also important that we look at these vast inequalities that we have in South Africa. So here I'll unpack you as one of the papers I wrote, The Humble Sardine. I unpack the importance of, you don't even, if you eat sardines and tomato once or twice a week, you will never need to visit the pharmacy for any vitamins, okay? Because there's enough for you to eat. And that's why I'm saying the fish that goes for fish meal is the most nutritious fish that we should eat. Should actually stay away from the kreef or the crayfish, the lobster, and the prawns. That's so heavy in cholesterol, and go for the small fish. Okay? Small but huge in mineral content. So they are all, it has all the nutrition, it digests easily, it lasts long, it has even vitamin D, A, calcium, selenium, all of that, because we eat the whole fish. We eat the eyes, we eat the bones, we eat the head, we eat the tail. We don't fillet it like the king clip we like in the curry. We eat everything and throw the rest away. It's very important that we include fish in the diet and the food parcel. But what disappoints me is that the food parcel all comes, the fish is in the tin. Why aren't you sourcing fish from small-scale fishers? Wouldn't that be making their life a difference in the life and the livelihoods of communities? Wouldn't we then have maybe less crime and domestic violence because there's a little bit more money? So I think and I speak to the audience that gives out food and buys food at the wholesale. Please also target your food like you target the food gardens, to target the small-scale fishers. Target those fishermen that you not only support yourself, but also support the community. It brings me to kind of look at the concept of, I always ask the question, fish for whom? So when we say there's a market for fish, we look at key to the debate on this is how it impacts on the poor who produce the food. And this is something that has been bothering me for a long time. So we get the luxury consumption for seafood, and especially bluefin tuna, our yellowfin tuna. Our tuna doesn't even land in South Africa, it immediately goes to Japan. So we don't even have access to it. But it's okay, because all of the stuff that goes in the ocean, the tuna carries a lot of mercury too. So let's go for the small fish and it's okay. But it is important that we protect the nutrition and the composition of the small fish, and especially small pelagics. Yeah, I'm talking of sardine, I'm talking about anchovy, I'm talking about even as big as a harde, or is these small fish is what I'm saying that is important, that we need to protect and need to be part of it. And small-scale fisheries on the continent, they salt it, they dry it, they smoke it, and that is ways of preserving. And even a bikkie, asyn and onions, and for the audience, vinegar and onions also as part of preserving. So what do we mean by food sovereignty? So food sovereignty is a food system where those who produce, distribute, and consume food and also control the mechanism of the policy of the food production. So fishermen need to be part of the whole process. They cannot just be catching and giving it over to big companies to process and to market. They need to be part, and that's where the inequalities start, where the money comes in. And it is very important that we need to start saying, okay, I might not have to have a banana every day because that banana comes from Durban. So food sovereignty means that I have to eat what grows locally. I have to eat what I can grow, and I have to eat what is in season. So my cravings for mango is going to be soon over, but I also have to think about the food sovereignty of mango. It comes from the north, so it travels. So it's very important that when we do eat, that we need to eat locally, and we need to go back to what Julian spoke about, genetically enhancing or engineering, whatever the word is. But for me, it's like in every township, in every district you go, the first thing you see is a bottle store, the second is KFC. And if it is a payout day, people are around KFC. And to what extent, to what nutrition is actually in there? So I think it's important that it would be so good to see that garden spread all over and people eat the nutritious food that they produce. So food sovereignty is also a political concept that people are striving, that local people who produce the food must also eat the food. And I think it's also important for charity organizations, especially faith-based organizations, to purchase from people who produce the food. That, I think, is very important. To get a basket, not just a packet of highly processed food, but also a basket of vegetables as part of your distribution is important. We have on our website, YouTube website of PLAS, we have a short video that goes into these inequalities in the 3 countries, and there's so much that South Africa can learn from Tanzania and from Ghana as to how they support local small producers. You go to the market and the small producers are there. You go to the fish market is a buzz of fishers and women buying fish and for them to be able to sell. We go to Cork Bay, what do we see? Is this 5 of the 15 minutes that I have left? And also because I'm the only woman on this panel, I think I need more time. No, I'll try to go faster. I'm not going to tease. So this is a short documentary of our key findings of those study that I am not going to play. I'm just alerting. If you're interested, please watch it. It gives you a good insight around the importance of fish as food, but also how systems in Tanzania and Ghana can teach us a lot about supporting small producers and small-scale fishers in that slide. It is also about understanding the food system, this is some of the snook that is dried in Grassy Park. The other one is in Cork Bay, that's Borkums. And then there are also pictures of smoking in Ghana and selling fish. So it is important, if we look at the inequalities of the food system, to include the role of women. And women and their social reproductive role is often excluded when it comes to fisheries. This is the food system. And it is so important, your input cost, your producers, and also the produce, that fish must be at the center of that. It is important that the fish and the small fish. Now, I'm also talking, we might be thinking only about sardines that we are catching coastal, but there's also a lot of sardine species in Lake Kariba, in Lake Victoria, and the other Great Lakes around the country, where it produces small fish. And the problem is a lot of that small fish are also going for feed for chickens, especially in Kenya and East Africa. And the more you can have safety in handling the post-harvest, and secure the nutrition in the smoking and the salting, the better nutrition we will be able to eliminate the malnutrition we have in southern Africa. So it is very important that the long value chain from the input cost to export we need to make it shorter, so that what is being caught is being sold locally and eaten locally is very important, and not everything needs to go for export. Fish is an important source of income, and there's the stats in terms of the livelihoods around the world and the importance of fishes. And the question is how to increase the bargaining power of small-scale operators, both domestically and internationally. I was part of the forum last year that drafted a letter to the World Trade Organization to stop fisheries subsidies for big operators to come to the south and deplete the fisheries, but divert those subsidies to small-scale producers. Not to say stop subsidies completely, but subsidize small producers to be able to process and to sell their fish. Here is the issue of aquaculture. I spoke about fish meal. It's a competition for resources, but now it's just not aquaculture. I'm sure all of you have heard about the blue economy. And aquaculture in South Africa form part of the blue economy, and in so many other parts of Africa, aquaculture is important, is promoted. Africa has tried for many decades to farm fish, but they have been very, it's failed in Malawi, it's failed in many countries. The only two countries that have shown growth in aquaculture is that of Egypt and Nigeria. South Africa is mainly focusing on, didn't complete that, it was early morning. South Africa mainly focus on abalone culture. That is what they focus on. I'm almost, C's moving, I'm almost done, my last few slides. This slide I started off and I thought if I'm going to start here, I'm never going to end. So these are all the aspects that needs to be in place, that we need to look at the food system. We need to look at food security. We need to look at the nutrition of the food security, but all of those other factors around there impacts people. And it's important that tourism, marine protected areas, extractive industries, blue economy are all. So I've been also developing this concept, blue justice, for small-scale fisheries. So thank you very much. This is my last slide, and I hope I get a lot of questions.
We say shukran and thank you to Professor Muniba Isaacs for your informative presentation and extremely insightful. I'm sure we have questions and there will be an opportunity after the next presenter, inshallah. Our next presenter needs no introduction. I think everybody is familiar with Mr. Qasim Khan. But just a brief introduction to Mr. Qasim Khan. He's a PhD student at the University of Western Cape Institute for Policy, Land and Agrarian Studies. He's also an urban farmer. He's a social worker, adult educator, and has 28 years of experience working in NGO sectors. So without further ado, we call to the podium Mr. Qasim Khan. Shukran.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. And I'd like to start by thanking the organizers of this particular event for thinking it worthy of me to make a contribution somehow. And I hope, inshallah, that it will broaden our thinking around food security. Now, I was sitting earlier and thinking, am I at the advantage or at a disadvantage given who are the participants here? So you heard that I'm attached to PLAS, and so I feel that I'm in the presence of one of my teachers. I had a long negotiation and discussion with Professor May to get me to PLAS. So that's one area. The second area that is a bit of an advantage for me, a great advantage for me, is that I'm going to speak on the role of Muslim social welfare organizations. Bit of a mouthful. And why I am particularly feeling that I'm in a good space is that the organizations that I looked at, let's say the founders of these organizations are very much present here. So I'm honored to be in the presence of Judge A.B. Mohammed, but particularly our senior elder brother Ismail Kala. You were the founders of many of these and had some input and insights into the establishment of many of these Muslim social welfare organizations. If you were not directly involved, you certainly gave direct input into it. Last but not least, I do appropriate that title of being an urban farmer. And the reason I say I'm at advantage is that I'm in the almost august company of my brothers such as Azhar and Nazmi and Nazir at the back. These are people who are all involved in can I say small-scale agriculture, and that have dealt with and from whom I have learned, and particularly also our brother Saeed Mohammed, who, you know, normally you ask somebody, how are you? He asked me, what's the type of soil you're using? You know, so just to give you an idea, the nature and the company that we are in, that alhamdulillah is particularly useful. So I feel that much of the definitions, theories, examples, I don't need to go into it that much. But what I want to do is just to tell you what my study was about. It was a few years ago. And my question was food relief or food security, a study of the policies and programs of 4 Muslim social welfare organizations in South Africa. And so my sub-question to that was to investigate whether and to what extent Muslim social welfare organizations assist recipients in attaining and maintaining food security. Let me pause there for a moment. One of the things that you will notice that I use as materials to understand what organizations do is that they put out a lot of marketing materials and they tell people, support our food security program. And so one needs to test this, whether this was actually the case. One of the interesting things that you find about the Muslim community is that it is a community that almost self-funds. Many of the organizations that present from the NGO sector, generally they look for funding from either the state, corporate social investment programs of companies. They look for, what's this new word they call, for the very rich people. They go, yeah, in event, you know they are. So they look for these donations from people of that nature, you know. But the Muslim community has an interesting mechanism, and the mechanism is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which is raising money from zakah. So as you make your salah every day, 5 times a day, one of the things you are very conscious of is making sure that you understand what zakah is, and that you, when you are by the means, that you contribute towards this. So part of my study was to go into that detail and explain how, and here particularly I was focusing much on how zakah as an institution developed in South Africa. Now it is money from zakah and other funds such as sadaqah and lillah that the Muslim community funds its NGOs, funds those food parcels, funds all those interesting things that they go and do all over the world in saving lives after disasters that take place. And so this is a community that knows how to raise money and raise money. But the question that we are wanting to do, is it used efficiently? Is it used effectively? Okay. The other part of my study, which made it very easy, was to not talk about it today. You'll just see me skip past the slides, is to look at definitions of food aid, food security, food sovereignty, and to place these definitions on the table of these Muslim social welfare organizations. So when you say in your marketing material, food security, what is it that you understand? Okay. And so the way the study was conducted was to do it by asking semi-structured questions. And I sat with the likes of my esteemed brother over there who gave you good detail of what the Al-Imdad Foundation did, Brother Abid, and people from other organizations who then explained what their understanding of food security is, and more particularly what it is that the organization did. So Abid jumped the gun a bit and he told us all the great things I was going to tell you what the organization did, but as he is my brother, he is forgiven. Okay. But now, why does it matter? You know, if you look and you heard Professor Muniba and Professor Julian and even our guest speakers speak of the size of the activities that is taking place in terms of the provision of food, why would a 2% Muslim community matter? You know, and so what is they spend? And so one of the things that I just wanted to give you an insight into, and these are some of the agencies and that I have spoken to, and the amount of funds that they receive over one financial year is 1.2 billion rand. Okay. Now, it's not that significant an amount. But if you look at the broader NGO sector for the same year, I think that was 2019 or whatever, the broader NGO sector raised 10 billion rand. Now a 2% population raised 1.2 billion, and then there's 10 billion that is raised by the rest of South Africa, as it were, for a wide range of activities that the NGO sector. So the size of its spend is what makes it significant. I have another point later on that I will also point out again to why it is significant. Now, of course, just as an aside, this is not the only money that the Muslim community raises and spends. And so, alhamdulillah, I was one of the Hajis this year who went to spend at least 750 million rand for 3,500 people. So if you get an idea how much money we are dealing with, the Hajj this year, Hajis spent pre, during, post, all of that roughly came to 750 million rand. That's 750 million rand, separate from this 1.2 billion. Okay, I hope you're getting the sense of. Now, institutions such as these educational institutions, masajids, all of these institutions all raise money. Okay, and these are all separate pockets of money. And so when we think of who are we, who is in the room, what is the size and value of what we are doing, and how is our spend on food? Now, let us get back to this 1.2 billion. And again, I just want to leave you with this one last thought. A study was done separately, an earlier one by Brother Zainul in the OCAF Foundation. I think it was in the early days of OCAF, where they looked at many of the agencies and said, how much of your income do you actually spend on food? And this was very significant because the majority of funds that they spend is actually on food. So they spend it on during Ramadan, they spend it on Qurbani, they spend it on the food parcels, they spend it on the myriad of soup kitchens that there is. Now remember, this is what is accounted for. And two other areas that is not accounted for. Every good a Muslim who suddenly feels he has a bit of extra money on him, decides, you know what, I'm going to start a soup kitchen. I'm going to buy a big pot of food and make a big pot of akhni. And so these people are all giving food. They're spending money on food. It's unaccounted for. And the largest unaccounted for money, particularly on food, that is not calculated by anybody, is the largest amount of donations that Muslims give is what they give to their families and their extended families, which means it doesn't go through any particular system. And so again, this is used for food. So this gives you an idea why I feel it was important for us to look at the contribution of the Muslim community. I wanted to share with you a couple of slides on what it is that food security is, as well as what it is, what Professor Muniba was speaking about, food sovereignty. So I will skip that for now, but then I want to come to the approach that I took in the study itself. And so this was an approach by the Indian economist Amartya Sen, and he talks about what he refers to as an entitlement approach. And this is purely, it provides a framework to look at hunger, okay? And what he says is hunger is due to households and individuals being unable to acquire food. It is not due to inadequate food supply. Now, you know why a simple point like this needs further clarification. If you have a full belly, if you have enough money, both in cash or on your credit card to go and shop, and this is where we get most of our food, and somebody says, you know, South Africa is food insecure, or South Africa is food secure. One of the things that you'd think is, but there's so much food in the supermarket, you know? And so conflating this idea of there being so much food, and we even heard earlier from Professor May speaking about South Africa being an exporter of food. We have enough food in the country, but we started to conflate national self-sufficiency with household food security. And so there are many people who do not and have not don't have the ability to access food that is available. So that's in your earlier definition of what food security is. The food is available. The food is there in abundance, right? But they cannot access it because the way to access food in South Africa is to go to a shop, a supermarket, to actually buy the food. Now, if you don't have that income, and as we had heard earlier, not only were the small-scale spaza shops shut down during COVID, but those people who depended on a day labor, your gardener, the person who comes to clean your house or whatever, they could not move around to get that cash with which they could buy food, okay? And so the government's response was, here's 350 Rand. I think that will suffice for you. And then the president told about people making ice cream in Parliament and thought that that was not just quite funny, but that he thought that it was financially sustainable, whatever. And so for me, this is cynical. And I want to come back, and why I'm talking about this, and I'm taking the opportunity of saying the president of the country talks in such almost disdainful ways of how he helped. And then we come to a tradition like Islam, where the ruler of the country, the ruler of the state, walks in the night, finds the veterans, the widows, the orphans, and says, who is hungry? He knocks on their door, okay? Now, it may be a bit difficult for President Ramaphosa to move around, but the depth of the concern needs to be there. It cannot be cynical. So that 350 Rand, and I come to it again, is an amount that was received probably by some economists or somebody sitting with a calculator and say, give them 350 Rand. When we have in South Africa a point on a food poverty line, right? I think it's 690 Rand, okay? And I want you to keep this amount, 690 Rand, right? Which would have the most basics of food, right? The most basic of food, right? Anything below that amount would mean that you are food insecure, right? Now, we come to our Muslim charities, the ones who give the food parcels, Alhamdulillah, we give a food parcel of 400 rand, okay? Better than the other one who give a food parcel of 250 rand. And the question you ask yourself is, did they ever hear of the food poverty line? Well, I don't blame them, the president hasn't either, you understand? But the point that we are wanting to make is that these are important bits of information to have. So, you know, I was introduced earlier as say I'm an activist, so I don't want to sound like I'm a rebel rousing, but let me come back to these entitlements. Through Amartya Sen proposes through 3 different ways through which people actually have access to food. The one that I spoke about earlier was exchange entitlement, meaning you have money or you have a skill, you provide your labor, you get cash, and then you get your food like that. The second one is that of social transfer. And here we're talking about old age grants, grants to people who are disabled, to children, the social relief of the stairist grant, 350. Now, these are particularly important for any society to have, because there are people who just cannot work. It is impossible for them to generate the amount of money to look after themselves. Again, I think the old age grant is now at 1,500 rand or whatever, and 1890. You can see the agents sitting around. Yeah. Again, the question is that sufficient? And here is the most important point to keep in mind. When we talk about a family that is food secure, we must also ask, are the energy secure? Okay. If you are not food secure, if you are food secure, meaning you have the food, and I'm not talking about the small discomfort called load shedding, because after 2 hours you can go and make food. I'm talking about having the amount of money to have enough electricity in your house that gets shut down, but that electricity, or gas to make the food with, okay? So when we are thinking of, is our zakah money making a difference? Have we factored in the cost of the energy? Now, Professor Muniba spoke about fish and adding that into the food parcel, okay? I want to just point out something, that one of the things that many of the organizations do when they give those food parcels, they go to the food wholesaler. And alhamdulillah, in my study, I had the opportunity to interview a food wholesaler and to hear the inner workings of those negotiations that take place between our Muslim organizations and the food wholesaler. Now, there is salt, and there is salt, and there is flour, and there is flour, okay? And there is cooking oil. I don't know why I'm so nervous to say cooking oil. There's cooking oil and there's cooking oil, okay? And so what the Muslim organizations say to these wholesalers is, give me the best price, okay? And the reason is I want to support more people. Now, if what you are giving the people are, in a sense, harmful for them, you are adding now to other costs further down the line. Yeah? So if you want to give them crayfish and get high cholesterol, somebody is going to have to pay for it at some point. And so this is the need that we need to look at the details of it. My last point is the whole issue of own food production. And so I'll take another minute and I'll wrap up. Own food production. When people think about food security, they always talk about, well, you know what, own food production. Now, I've had these very interesting conversations because I am one of the fortunate people who have a garden, who grow things, and who actually sell the things that I grow. So I grow chilies and I grow aubergines or brinjal or whatever. But let me tell you that with the support that I have from the Department of Agriculture in the province, and the land that I'm leasing from the city, and alhamdulillah, the assistance that I got from some of the other organizations to set me up, the amount of money I make from the chilies covers petrol for 1 week, okay? Now, but it doesn't buy me food. It doesn't pay the electricity, which is more. So when we pressurize people and we say, and so people say, mashallah, Qasim, you know, this is a nice thing that you're doing. You got so many trees. So if all the poor people can just do what you are doing, wallahi, are we going to take that statement with us in front of the Almighty and say, this is how I dismiss this poor person? I told him, you know what, just go grow something. You understand? Do you know how difficult it is? Do you know what the challenges are? Okay. Do you know how that person suffers hoping that that harvest will be big enough for them to earn something? So when we talk about things like own food production as a way for the zakah money to be better spent, whatever, then let us think more about that. I'm going to end over. I'm sure that there will be questions. And I just wanted to leave you with this last slide, which is what are the coping strategies of people from the rural poor, okay? And so some people have difficulty in understanding, you know what, I paid my zakah, I actually put together food parcels, I took it to the people's homes, I gave it to them or whatever. But have you ever asked a poor person, how is it that you manage? How is it that 5 or 7 people in this household, how is it that you manage? Everybody who buys food knows the food gets consumed, there's a dip, and you need to buy more or whatever. Now, I'm leaving that there for you just to think about it. But there's a point there, for example, number 9. You send some of the members of the household to eat elsewhere. For that parent to make that decision, for that parent to say, I will eat less so that my child can eat more, is that moving us? Now, it should move us. And it should move us to say, you know what, when I eat, the poor have a right in my dish, in whatever I have in front of me. Now, we cannot have this type of conversation with people who do not consider, for example, a faith-based contribution to anything. But you say, I pay my zakah, with which I will one day hope to get salvation. But on the other side, the poor will have a voice if we don't give them a voice now. Shukran.
We say shukran to Mr. Qasim Khan. I think that was a very inspiring and thought-provoking presentation. We will now immediately open the floor for any questions. So, are there any questions? We have seen one hand. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Please just to state your name, maybe the organization that you're representing and the person that you're directing the question to.
Hi, everybody. Good day. Anthea from Earth Sisters. Professor Muniba, I can't wait to hear what you're going to answer to this question. Why is it successful, the fishing farms in Egypt, but, sorry, there was another one that you mentioned, but not anywhere else in Africa? What is the underlying causes for that? And yeah, why? I'm curious to know. Thank you.
Professor Muniba, you want to answer immediately or do we take 3 questions? How do you want to? Okay, we'll take another question. In front, there was a question on the side here. Somebody here in front. And there's one at the back. So we'll take 3 questions at a time and then we will ask the panel to respond. Bismillah. Oh, yes, you're in front, there was a question. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Professor Muniba, you in your presentation, you spoke about getting the small-scale fishermen involved. What's the plan of how do you get them involved? Because nothing without us, you know. So that's one. Number 2, you spoke about buying local. Very important point you brought up. Do we have any local fishermen, I'm just using the Western Cape now as an example, where the charity organizations can go and buy from them for that sustainable, what they call food that the fish has? So just know on those 2 points. How do you get them involved to be in the decision making with the big, co-ops? Number 2, is there any successful stories of fishermen that are now selling that the NGOs here in Cape Town can go and buy from them, and we ask them to do so? Thank you.
One question at the back there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ridwan Khalant. I'm from the Department of Theology at UWC. And I think I've got a question and a contribution for Mr. Qasim Khan and for Dr. Muniba. Firstly, I think it's important that I mention that at UWC a few years ago, we had a research known as food contestation. whereby, and I think Kasim Khan knows very well about this because he was part of the project at that time. So what happened was that we did research that was the Muslims and the non-Muslims students at UWC. How can food be distributed and collected in a very short time? And what they found was, for example, in the month of Ramadan, when Zakat al-Fitr is being distributed and collected, and also the Sadaqah and the Zakah. And at the same time, it is also very, very much distributed in a very, very short time. And that was one of the findings which we found, which we discovered in our research at UWC. Also, in the time of Hajj, when there is a lot of meat available in Saudi Arabia, for example, in the Hajj, in the Udhiyah, and the Hadi. And that also is a contribution where the Muslims can make in terms of distributing food. Coming back to Dr. Muniba, I want to know there's something very important. I'm concerned about the gill nets in the fish, in the sea. It kills many life in the sea, the small fish. And that is it affects the small scale fishermen.
Okay.
It's only the big scales who benefit from that.
Okay.
I would like you to
Shukran.
elaborate on that.
Okay.
Shukran.
We have 5 minutes left before the waqt of the word. So, Professor Muniba, we have one question here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we will conclude. Shukran. Yeah, Professor Muniba.
Okay. Shukran for your questions. Very, very interesting questions. I'm going to start with the first one on aquaculture in Egypt and Nigeria. Why is it successful? Because the government has invested huge amounts in making it a success. And I think it is also the species that they choose. Catfish is very popular, and catfish is the fish that grows in a very short period of time. So it's also the conditions in the catfish, and they do it commercially. The success for subsistence and family culture that is very traditional in Asia is not what we have. Problem in South Africa is that we have dams, but we're also water scarce country. So we need to look at those conditions. I know that there's been failed projects in Namibia, which should have been at the beginning. They said you could think that Namibia is a water scarce country. You create a pond, and then they came back and the fish was all dead because of the heat. So surely there's kind of input costs. So what works in Asia doesn't necessarily work here, and it's not necessarily that we find the best conditions. So it's the high value that has been very successful. I'm going to, maybe we can have a conversation a bit more on that during lunch. On fishermen being part of and involved in the decision making, I think that it is important that when we talk about getting fishermen part of the decision making, I think there are a lot of people who are in fishing in the Western Cape. But I think when we're targeting small scale fishers, it means that there's also lack of organizing. So just now with the small-scale fisheries policy in the Western Cape, so many organizations pop up over WhatsApp, and more organizations because they want access to the small-scale fisheries policy. So I think part of the contribution could also be to what extent can some of the organizations help in organizing small-scale fishers. I don't think it is a lot in terms of, processing but somehow intervention in supporting them to have. They've tried in Grassy Park, fish market. It's not necessarily ideal. There's a lot of restrictions on harbors as to have space. It's almost that you need to have it in an upmarket way, in a more kind of high-end way that is often problematic. We go to Tanzania, I have to have special clothes for the market, and I put it in a bag bag and I don't wear it again, because that is what the fish market is like. It's going to smell like fish. So I would urge us to think. I don't necessarily have the answers. I know all the issues, to think how then to organize them, how then to structure them, and how to get a constant stream of fish. I can say in Struisbaai, during the summer months from November, there are schools of yellowtail coming closer to the shore. But a lot of that is already taken up by big business. So I think if charity organizations can help and organize and get people into it, and at times they get 12 rand a kilo. And when you get here, they sell it for 120 rand a kilo. So I think it is about also trying to kind of be helping the process of organizing and getting that system in place. In terms of buying local, I think that is the same. There are strict restrictions as to what you can buy local and where you can sell. And I think that is an important problem, because we used to have the fish horn going across the table bay. We used to have people selling fish all the time, and that has also been stopped. I think that it is important that we should buy from the back of the buckies. We should make sure that it doesn't come from New Zealand and it comes from the West Coast. We are very keen on reading labels. We want to know exactly what ingredients is in that label that I may or may not eat, you know? So it's important that we ask these questions. But coming back to in terms of local, I think it's also, if there had been a Kreef festival in Hout Bay, how many of us wouldn't go for that and go buy locally than to buy illegally? You know, we all know that. Okay, I'm going to move off from that, but I think once we can make that illegal route a more legal route and a more formal route and a more sustainable way of income, I think that would make lives completely impacted. I think that is so important for us to do.
Sure, can we take the last 4 questions, and we will have to break for Salah. There's one. Here was a question here. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks to the organizers. I think the most important thing from this conference is what we take back. And I think we should immediately get all the role players together and establish small-scale farmers. Nazir Sonde has got excellent method that he has activated on his farm called a 1 hectare model. How he established that model, what he's used, and what it cost him to set up that model. And I think we should just duplicate that model. And all our Islamic organizations should get involved in small-scale farming. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back, there's some shukran for that comment at the back.
Me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I just want to build on what the previous speakers try to define food security. So I want to build on what also Brother Kasim Khan also spoke about. And I want to make a couple of points. My name is Nazir Sonde. I'm a small-scale farmer in the Philippine horticulture area. We try to protect the area for the city's food supply. I'm also doing training on the farm. So to expand on food security, there are a number of other issues that also impact on food security. So the one issue is that really, as many speakers have said, it's not necessarily that you need to grow more food or you need to be more efficient in growing that food. It's how the food is getting to communities. Because the supply chains are dominated by conglomerates and they set the price and they dominate and the market price. Supermarkets control 70% of our food supply. So they set the price. And at price, a lot of poor out of accessing food. The other issue that relates to food security is our farmer population. We have 34,000 white, large-scale commercial farmers farming to 80% of our food, right? And their average age is 62. Right, so we have an aging farmer population, and we don't have a land reform program that is looking at sustainably replacing these white farmers with farmers of color. Then, of course, food security is also about access. Access is about what people can afford to buy. Then the other thing about food security is also that we have a poor land reform problem, right? So the food security is connected to land in a way that can place farmers on land for them to grow food for the household, but also to sell a surplus. And so we have a poor land reform program in the country. Then we also a lot of our food is considered commodities and exported, while there's zero recognition for the need to grow local food for local consumption. Now, the Philippine horticulture area is one of those areas that are growing your vegetables. 40% of the vegetables that you're consuming in the city coming from our area. But we're under pressure from developers who want to pave over our area because it's not considered important to have locally grown food.
Can we just keep it a bit short? We are already 5 minutes over time. So
Finally, I want to say around food security, really the food security plan should be coupled with land reform and creating jobs and livelihoods. Without that, we will forever remain in an emergency challenging situation around food security. I just want to expand the definition of food security here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, second last question. You want to come in quickly? Or you want to make the final concluding comments after the end because we're almost done.
Okay, I wanted to speak on behalf of 5 other activists that we came together. What are the opportunities available for our small community-based organizations? We have been feeding people during the lockdown, and now we are moving into sustainable ways of helping the poor people in our communities, but we have no resources. Even the food itself, we struggle a lot to just get a bag of rice to feed our communities. What are the opportunities that are available that we can take home today so we continue doing our work? We've been offered land in our communities to grow food, but when it comes to the seedlings, the compost and everything, we do not have.
Thank you. Last question, yeah? Front here in front. Last question. Yeah. If there are more questions, you can engage with the panel during lunchtime. There will be an hour lunch, so please do engage with the panel during lunch. Sure. So we'll take the final question and then we'll ask the panel to respond and then we'll immediately break for lunch. And lunch will be served in the main hall, Islamia's main hall, and the work can be performed at the masjid, inshallah.
Quickly, a question to Qasim there. We've had a lot of discussion around small-scale farming and how that has been advantageous to the community. But when are we going to begin to transition towards Muslim farmers looking at large-scale corporate farming and becoming challenges to the corporates that are there? We're playing in a small space and we're not getting to that quantity. And with the ethics that we come with, perhaps we can again begin to look at more equitable food prices and getting food to people more justly.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Azhar, for that question. This was going to be my closing point that I wanted to make. Earlier, Professor Julian May spoke about the food system. Professor Maniba also spoke about the food system. Now, if we start looking at our participation as a Muslim community in South Africa, which significantly came here as slaves, as indentured laborers, and who were kept out of the economy by both the colonial and the apartheid systems, and yet we have triumphed, and yet we are big players, and I'm going to say this, big players in food. And here's going to be my example that I'm going to give you. When you look at the food system, the poorest person in South Africa buys their food at what we refer to as a Bengali or Somali shop. We know for certain that these are Muslim traders, okay? Now you start there, and you go up into the food system. They buy their food from the Muslim wholesalers, the very wholesalers that buy together. These big Muslim wholesalers that give good prices to our charities. Our charity sector itself is a big player, okay? We have, mashallah, our sheikh here who's one of the halal authorities. 5 halal authorities. Do you know that in a supermarket like a Checkers, 60% of all the items in the shop is marked halal? You tell me we don't have leverage. I don't know about not having leverage. Then we go further up on the scale, right? So we've got small scale, humanitarian organizations, certifying organizations, wholesalers we have. Then we have people like, for example, the Willowton Group, who by and large controls cooking oil in South Africa, okay? More directly or more indirectly, for example, the sardine is made by our brother Musa Bray and his companies. You know. There is that fish in almost every home in South Africa, okay? Now, I believe some of our Muslim people who are either fairly wealthy or those people who are involved, and this comes to your point, Azhar, who manage investment houses, okay? Now start investing in food, start investing in those other contributors such as packaging, transport, storage, right? These are all on the food system, okay? And then when we look then at that 62-year-old farmers who are out here in the Western Cape or whatever, we should be making them offers and say, you know what, we know your children are living in London and America and whatever, how about we start buying out your farms, okay? But the ones with the money, right? The ones who put all that money into these big Muslim investment houses or whatever, they are not thinking like that. And if we are saying, and I'm going to use the worst example ever of the worst person I think that lives still today is a man called Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger says, whoever controls the food controls the people. But we are not making a contribution in an ethical way. Right? But let's not think of ourselves as, okay, you're the charities, you are the halal authorities, you are the humanitarian organizations. Let's look at the entire food system together. And now I'm going to put this last point. I'm looking at my elders here and say, you are people with influence. Get the people around the table. You know that to call Mr. Musa around the table and Mr. Suleiman around the table and Mr. whoever else, the head of the Somali Association, all the regulatory bodies, call them around the table, say, food system approach. No big theory, just put that one definition. This is what the food system is. You are all part of it. You can strengthen each other, and we can start buying out those farms, and we can bring the price of food down. And just because I have not forgotten that we should start looking at our own practices in the fishing sector. Because there are big players from the Muslim community in the fishing sector. How are they uplifting the small fishermen, or how are they pricing them out of the business? Shukran.
Professor Muniba? Final comment, yes.
Yeah, I think that for me, if we want to be part of the change, we need to start at the beginning, and we need to start with small producers, small scale fishers, help them to get organized, help them with infrastructure, and help them with the supply chain. And I think that for me would encourage a more just food system, and also a more nutritious food basket that we hand over. Shukran to all.
Shukran, we say shukran to Professor Muniba and Mr. Kasim Khan for your presentation. We now break for lunch and salah. So lunch will be served in the main hall and we'll convene immediately at 2 p.m. Please, we'll convene immediately at 2 p.m. Shukran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today and to introduce or to give an introduction about the ecosystem of IOFS. Before we start, I would like to ask a question. How many of us are actually aware of the amount of food wastage happening in the globe? Can I see some hands? Okay, very few, mashallah. The amount of wastage is predicted to be 1.2 billion tons of food wastage, worth about $1 trillion US. We've designed an ecosystem which, inshallah ta'ala, tackles food security issues farm to fork. It tackles them from all angles. It takes into aspect many food security problems, inshallah. It's considered as a holistic, it's a, as a comprehensive yet a holistic approach. So it takes into account things and problems which are happening from the farmyards and until it reaches the consumer. By the way, the amount of food waste we talked about, I forgot to mention, sorry, is just the amount of food waste until it reaches the consumer. Once it reaches the consumer, that's another story. We're talking about the food wastage before it reaches the consumer. It's about 33% of the total food produced. Our ecosystem is also pragmatic and it's evidence-driven. It's built on successful case studies. Part of it here or there has been actually already executed somewhere or the other in the world. So it's not just an idea we came up with. No, it's actually evidence-proven. It is also a destructive and forward way of thinking. It can really tackle expected malnutrition and hunger, which is expected to happen and to increase in our world. It is, It's a robust ecosystem, so it's actually built to be into blocks which integrate whatever part of this ecosystem you perform anywhere. It will give a good effect. You don't have to do it all in one place. Whatever part you do of it will have a positive effect on the country in many different ways, including the economy, the food security, and other ways. And it actually all integrates together. So you can do part of it in South Africa, part of it somewhere else in the world. Still, it'll all integrate together. The ecosystem we are presenting to you today simulates economic growth. It creates jobs. It can create more than 3 million jobs, inshallah ta'ala, in the coming years. It helps entrepreneurs. It helps businesses. It's really supporting the economy from many different angles. It's not just food security. The IOFS fund is offering really good returns for investments. There's an IOFS fund, which is an opportunity and gives really good returns on investments. If the ecosystem designed is actually executed the correct way, it will reduce, inshallah ta'ala, import dependency from 15 to 25%, inshallah. And it will also give more price stability in the market. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you.
We thank Brother Munib Muhammad for his presentation. We can ask Brother Afzal Hussain to come.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I thank the organizers for allowing us to address today, and especially for His Excellency Advocate and His Excellency Yarlan Bidawlat to be part of it, and all other delegates. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Munib, for giving a brief about the ecosystem. This ecosystem, why did we, the first question comes, why did we, build something like this? The question which came to us through IOFS, working closely with IOFS and other organizations, biggest challenge today as Muslim Ummah or general, globally, we have a lot of challenges. For example, when we talk about agriculture, okay, I'm talking about most of the Muslim countries, 75% of our farmers are using hand tools. When the world went into drones, AIs, what all, we are still using, we don't have tractors, okay? Like this, we have every vertical challenges, and today, most of the panelists, speakers, they address so many challenges. Okay, we took more than 300 studies. Okay, we have a team more than 30 different countries. When we start reading case studies and understanding challenges, some of them, Abdul Bari, for example, he went through 300 case studies. He said, I never studied, even in my MBA, so many case studies and to understand. So what we did was, we understand from every aspect, data from the government, data from the universities, then data from the retail industry. So our team is into different industries, different they are in different retail industries and in the government. So we gathered the data to find solutions. So what we are coming here is in an overall generic, okay, to understand like all 57 countries we kept together to understand, to bring a solution which is pragmatic, as he mentioned. Okay, one thing we kept very clear is how do we address this? And this is build it like it's like a Lego, like a building blocks. It could be implemented in a one certain country, one piece of it, other part would be done in some other country, but and you will see a result, okay, which will create a very big impact, inshallah. This system has 5 pillars. It will start with model support centers. For example, anything related to agribusiness, let it be agriculture, let it be livestock, let it be fisheries, aquaculture, and those things. What are the farmers or what are the end producers are facing challenges? For example, there are some countries, they have arable land, they are major producers, they have land, they have water, all the resources, but they don't have money. Okay, there are some other who has money. Okay, there are extreme weather conditions. For example, Gulf doesn't allow them to produce anything except, some like Saudi is doing amazing job in that side. So we understand every depth. For example, this particular model support center address about all the challenges on the producing side. Okay, it talks about, for example, international best practices. It talks about climate change, agri-technologies, okay, crop planning and those things. So it starts from even the planning. Today, we see in most of the countries, these are challenges. Producing countries, they produce, for example, tomatoes or something else, they don't get the right price. They went, because the plant itself, it's not planned as per what is the demand and supply. To understand, this model support center will address all those from, starting from the planning into all listed below here. When we did analyze the challenges, especially related to the wastage, for example, these are basics are missing. Okay, for example, I remember I visited in Milano and Rome in 2008-9. Their fruit market, vegetable market was so organized those days. Till today, in most of the Muslim countries, the way food comes to the market itself, it's stacked in, this banana cartoons and those things. So it gets damaged from the packaging itself, damaged from the transport. So those kind of challenges, how do we address? This is where Model Support Center will help on packaging, production, okay, training them, climate change, agriculture practices, water management, pest control. So all could address in this vertical basically. On the next vertical, it talks about industry development. For example, once you have, imagine all the challenges are addressed at the producing side, this is where we are talking about what is next. Okay, next is how do we build, the next generation brands. For example, I'll give you one number. I will not take much time of you guys. For example, when we talk about, we produce, in Muslim countries, we produce around 30% of the food globally. But how many brands do we have in top 100 brands in the world? At least we should have 30%, right? But we have 0. How do we address that? So that is where industry development comes there to improve the processing, packaging, okay, to create those brands, create the marketing, create the industry to the next level. This is where there'll be investment on creating from raw products into the brands, to have the brands which are, standards of international standards, which could easily be consumed locally. This is where even comes, brand perception changing, improving. There is a very clear perception. Normally, it's been built in most of the countries. When we talk about local, they say, no, this is average quality, imported is better. So if we don't work on a complete ecosystem, it will not help. To change that, perception, and those things will work on it. Then the third one comes as a capacity building. This is where we talk about distribution hubs. Imagine one, we have on Model Support Center, the raw product is there, then you have your brands. So where do you sell this? Today, it's all controlled by, some, I would say, mafia or whatever it is. It's not easy. You cannot take a product or anything, go to the market and it will be welcome for you. because it's controlled by few people. It's not that easy to the intermarket. That is where we come with solutions, which is a distribution hub. Okay, then there is cooperative society, SAZs. SAZs, again, we developed specifically for some of the countries. For example, if you see, when we did research, understand, last 4 or 5 years, the kind of amount, okay, been invested in in the name of food security, most of them goes to the Western world, to other areas. But how much of this comes to, for example, African countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Egypt, or there is one basic challenge. Okay, when we sat with sovereign funds like PIF. Okay, Hassad, food, like this, all top countries, food, they have hundreds of $billions to invest on, on food security. But their one question is, okay, they say when we talk about Africa, for example, anything Niger, Nigeria, Mozambique, those areas, there is one issue is, there is no trust issue. There is there are challenges related to transparency. There is challenges related to governmental, instability. How do we address this? This is why we came up with a plan called special agri zones. Okay, special agri zones will address those things. This will be signed through IOFS. IOFS will sign a treaties on behalf of 57 countries, so that this area will be like, we are not talking about tax cut. Normally, special economical zones talks about tax cuts. Here, rather than, it's a safe zone for the investor, so that we can attract sovereign funds, we can attract private sector, because any economy, if we want, the backbone of the economy is the private sector. To involve them, you need to give them security and those things. His Excellency Yarlan has already started discussing regarding special agri zones in many African countries, and they love the concept. They said, they even said that we will help you on one condition, you should start with us, for example. So these kind of things we are coming, so that even it will open doors for businessmen from South Africa. We want our Muslim brothers to be, part of it, and to ensure that we create a loop of investments which will be invested in African countries to take this to the next level. Okay, we have a complete concept which is built on PPP models, where there'll be private sector which will be main, there'll be financial institutes will be involved in this. At the same time, sovereign funds, they have the money. Only challenge is the hurdles they have, we need to remove those. That is a reason we are talking to different entities across different countries, in 57 different countries. Okay, we have a very good traction so far, inshallah. Then the fourth one is farmers market, especially like when farmers growing in their own country, the biggest challenge is they don't get right price. Okay, again, few people control it. This is the reason why today farmers are going out. People are selling their lands and doing labor job. Is it, that's bad, because the big challenge is, okay, they don't get the right price. For example, a friend of mine, okay, he's part of our organization, he went to Philippines last year for procuring banana. He was shocked to see some of the large corporations, global corporations, they buy banana. Banana is normally sold at around $2 globally, $1.5 to $2 to the end retailer. The guys who produce, this is the best quality he's talking about, he gets 10 cents. Is it fair? How do you break this? This is how we develop this is how we do. We took all the problems. How do we solve these problems? So that is why this is all connected to each other. It will help to give them, for example, in South Africa, we are talking about if there are farmers market where farmer can go have an access to those store and he sells himself, so that it's, entire dollar the farmer gets. If we don't give those kind of opportunities, these industries will always remain like this. Even big bankers are sitting here, okay? The last sector they will invest is agriculture, okay? Because that industry is not ready. That industry need to be complete revive. It's not, you cannot work on, it's like you're in a boat, there is a leakage, you cannot, put one tape and wait for the other hole to open it. We need to find a complete solution for this problem. This is where we are coming into a complete solution to implement in these countries to find the solution. For sure, it's not an easy walk. We'll have challenges. Okay, we'll have lot of challenges. Lot of people will be against us and all those things. But inshallah, with the will of Allah, okay, with right leaders with us, inshallah, we can achieve this. Moving forward to the fourth pillar, which is resource mobilization. In resource mobilization, here we are talking about access to research and development, which today some of the speakers have mentioned they're doing research and all those things. Okay, those kind of access today, how many farmers they have today, access to data, research and all those things. When you talk about and access to next generation technologies. Okay, when we talk about in agribusiness and those things, there are a lot of new technologies. To understand this, we need to understand the case studies, for example, about Brazil. Brazil was one of the biggest food importers. Today, they are feeding the world. Similar, Netherlands. What was the one thing which was different? Investment on technologies. This is where we are working on it. Inshallah, our next speaker, Abdul Bari, will talk about some of the technology we are talking about. Okay, there'll be, hundreds of technologies it will be introduced, but we are starting with one or two to start with. And very important is, our access to the finance and access to the market. This is what today one of the biggest challenge the farmers or the producers or the manufacturers has. So this will be addressed through resource mobilization, inshallah. Then the last one, it's intra-trade. Okay, today one of the biggest challenge in Muslim countries we have is, okay, we buy from others, but as I said, okay, perception challenges and a lot of things. We import from others, but the countries, okay, is the biggest challenge, the trade. So with intra-trade, building a trade between different countries, okay, for example, into even African countries, when I was studying about Africa itself, a lot of challenges. They're importing from others, but they don't have trade between them due to a lot of challenges we know happening recently. Inshallah, it will all solve soon. Okay, this will even help the price sustainability, because once we connect the farmer to the consumer, there'll be a price reduction. Price will be also, and we have seen the price, how food, how it can be, how dangerous. For example, normally inflation normally was related to oil and gas and petroleum normally, but what we saw especially during COVID and recently during Ukraine war, it's very clear, even food has impacted hugely on inflation. So with implementing those things, it will help even on countries on a larger scale onto inflation, inshallah, controlling the inflation. It talks about trade agreements, lobbying, advocacy, and those things. This is basically a new ecosystem for Islamic organization for food security. And out of this, these are 20 different programs. I want to give you one glimpse how it will do. It's not all of them. We'll do it about one of it just to give an idea, inshallah. This, we are talking about food hubs. How this hub, okay, to get hub, for sure, we need to work on SAZs, we need to work on model support centers, all those things. Okay, this is one of the projects we are working, for example, piloting with Kazakhstan, Qatar, and our initially, there's something problem here. It's working? Okay, because here it's changed. So, what you see in the blue is our pilot, okay? We want to start, for example, 5 different countries in different regions, some from Africa, some from, for example, Gulf and Kazakhstan and Indonesia or Malaysia, inshallah. These hubs will help to promote, to build the trade between the countries, to build the products between the countries, so that you build the trade, promote the trade, inshallah. Okay, some of the countries we are already discussing almost in the final stages, like Kazakhstan is one of them, Qatar we are discussing with them, and Indonesia reached us for them to being a hub for fish products, for example. How it will work is, it will understand, from which sector, what commodities they can produce, what commodities they have challenges, so that you give the solutions for that commodities from that different countries, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. I am done here. I'll welcome Brother Abdul Bari to take this from there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I see some more sleeping out there. All right, guys. So I guess after the good heavy lunch, you guys have just woken up now. All right, so I'm just continuing where Brother Afzal is left. Although we cannot dwell into the entire ecosystem, but I'm going to talk about two aspects of the ecosystem where we are exclusively talking about access to technology. Brother Afzal just told us, unfortunately, 75% of OIC countries still manage their agriculture with the hand tools. You got it right? 75% of OIC countries, they still use hand tools for their agriculture. Whereas when you compare the other countries which have gone ahead of us, say Netherlands, say Brazil, say Israel, India, the technology is just reverse. They use 75% of the technology. All right? So that's where we are, and that's where IOFS is heading, to just change these numbers. And we are pretty sure, inshallah, in the next 5 years, we will have a very positive impact of IOFS in all these 57 countries, inshallah. And before I get into the nitty-gritties of this presentation, we chose only two technologies that could be game changers. One is food security, in terms of Sister Muniba was talking about fish farming. So I'm going to touch upon only aquaculture because the two potential technologies that it's going to be changing games is, one is aquaculture and the other one is Trade 57, which we call T57, which is a platform where we have been talking about all the problems since morning. We're talking about access to markets. We've been talking about access to technologies. We have been talking about access to finance. How do you solve it? You don't have a magic wand, do we? And it's going to take us 50 years. Why have we not gone there is because we have stayed and laid back, and we have not gone where the other countries have gone. So we have not touched upon the technology. We have not leveraged the technologies. So that is one of the aspects. So, so this is what, see, the strategic goal or the value proposition you called is, with aqua farming, is fish self-sufficiency. This technology that I'm talking to you about is called ACE. Brother Hafiz, I sent him, can you just give me your topic for the conference? I sent him ACE, ING technologies. he just sent me a text. Is it a deliberate one or is it a typo? What is it? I said, no, ACE is acing technologies with ACE is aquaculture for center of excellence. That's ACE, all right? So what is this technology all about? We'll just go ahead and we'll see. This technology will contribute to the economic diversification of the efforts. It will unlock the new promising aquaculture, reshaping the future of the fish farming, which is going to produce 20 times more than the traditional farms on the same size. And then it will, obviously, we have all been concerned about our environmental factors, environmental issues, so it's going to address this as well. And then finally, it's a unique value proposition for both the domestic and the international markets as well. This technology is 4.5 star rated by Singapore. And this technology is of Singapore. So we are the implementation partners for ACE for 57 Islamic countries. And then, how many of you have had fish and you thought it is, I'm talking about the farm fish, and you thought it is organic? Are you sure it's organic? Sister will tell me. No, right? Yeah. So this is the world's first patented technology, which is not using vaccines, which is not using antibiotics, and it complies to all the environmental standards. So this, in a way, is all natural, all right? So Sister was talking about, proteins and vitamins and all that. Yeah, so this fish has all this as well. All right, so we'll just go ahead. So what are the key benefits of ACE? This is the advanced aquaculture technology, and this is the world's first patented technology with 4.5 star rated Singapore by the Singapore government. All right. So we are also talking about producing locally, processing locally. All right. Can you imagine it's being produced, and in just about 1 kilometer, it is processed and delivered. Just about 1 kilometer of the shore. If you have 6 meters of the water deep inside, and this technology works there. All right, so this is the fastest mile delivery. We call the fastest mile delivery, 1 mile delivery, which is within 1 kilometer. It can be processed, it can be delivered to the stores. So that kind of technology is this, all right? So then we're talking about sustainability of environmental responsibility. Yes, water management is a huge responsibility now. If you have heard about this hadith, Rasul said that during the days of Yawm al-Qiyamah, that is the end of this world, people will start fighting for water, even for 1 glass of water, all right? So water management is a big responsibility. So we need to be responsible in using the water for the people as well, and as well as the creatures which are living inside the sea. So this this is going to take into consideration about sustainability and environmental responsibility as well. And then diverse species and high quality product. You can breed local, you can make local, and you can also have premium fish. Any kind of fish you want to grow, it's possible there. And then obviously this is going to be a food security project. There is one country that we are going to implement this specifically for food security, and they have a requirement of 6,000 ton capacity consumption per year, and they are currently able to meet only 2,000, and we are going to implement this to cover up 6,000. And we are going to also have an offtake of 4,000 tons fish, which inshallah, we are planning to distribute it through them to the poor nations as well, where this hunger eradication will happen, inshallah, bismillah ta'ala. All right. So this is also, like I told, 20 times more than traditional farm. It stimulates the economic growth. Obviously, it can be exported as well, so it can bring in a lot of money. And then it'll premium, it is, it produces local fish, which is about 40,000 kg per tank. We call it one tank. There's an Eco Arc and there's an Eco Spark, all right? So I'll tell you what Eco Arc and what Eco Spark is. See, the Eco Arc is, Eco Spark is where this fingerlings, the harvest starts, and Eco Arc is where the actual fish production happens. So this can produce, if 10 arcs are there, this can produce 2,500 tons of fish in a year. 2,500 tons in a year. So that's about food security. So I've closed in about one technology. I'm coming to the next part of it. We have been talking about access to market. Access to market. Farmers are not getting their full dollar value. Elimination of mafia. So we are all talking about that. How do you do that? I told. We have stayed back as OIC countries from technologies, especially in agriculture sector. This is what the next big thing is in terms of IOFS. So you heard about Uber, Alibaba, wholesale booking. This is the next one, T57, Trade 57. It's a trade platform, online trade platform between the Islamic countries, 57 Islamic countries, where everyone is given the access to sell their products. Be it a farmer, imagine a farmer in South Africa, imagine a farmer in Kazakhstan wants to connect. Some of my friends told me that we wanted to buy something from Kazakhstan, say let's be wheat or some products. So how does he know where is it being sold? How do you know? Today sitting here from South Africa, how do you know where is this wheat sold in Kazakhstan? And if you know, Kazakhstan is now, it's about the consumption of wheat in Kazakhstan is 24,000 tons. Whereas, produces 24,000 tons and their consumption is only 7,000 tons. So what are they doing with the rest of it? 7 million tons, sorry. What are they going to do with the rest of the thing? So he was talking about the food waste. Professor Hilaal will tell you, that sometimes this wheat is dumped because they are not able to sell it out. This is shocking. So how do you solve it? How do you solve? Imagine 7,000 tons are being dumped somewhere. 7,000 million tons. 7 million tons, sorry. So these are the trade platforms that we need to develop so that the connection happen better. The Muslim-made products are also pumped in so that we benefit from each other. It's an economy of scales that we have to leverage, all right? So I'm going to quickly walk through. This application, in fact, addresses the food wastage and the food security, and it facilitates the intra-trade facilitation. It's actually a connecting platform between businesses, governments, and farmers. So this is a direct connecting platform. And then you have many features, so let's not get into it. So the surplus and the deficit that I'm talking to you about, like Kazakhstan is having a surplus now, which country wants to consume it? So there is a country which is a deficit, there is a country which is surplus. So how do you match them? How do you get them onto one platform and address that food wastage, all right? So this is one, farmer and buyer connectivity. Farmers can just go list their products, their verification process. So there is a lot of business cases that we cannot get into and discuss right now because we don't have time. And they're secure cross-border transactions. I think you all have been into Alibaba, right? So Alibaba secures. Why is Alibaba so successful? Because it secures their transactions. So this kind of secure transactions, the commodity supply and demands. Where is, for example, if I'm in South Africa and I want to see where are the buyers for my apples and the oranges in the market, which market now has a demand. Now I'm coming from India and I'm told the Kashmir is going shortage of apples. So this supply demand forecast can give you that, okay, from South Africa, the supply is going to be less in India, so that's a market for me to pump in my product, right? So this is the kind of a feature that is, and then obviously a network and collaboration, farmers can come, business people can come and interact, and all those things will happen. So embedded solutions, then trade route visibilities, then trace your producer, renter technology. This renter technology, for example, you see we are telling 75% of our population does not use hand tools. So imagine one has a drone and he's just using that and it's not being utilized. So how can he leverage that? So the simple solution is he's going to rent a technology on the platform. Some other farmer is going to come. Do you know that to spray the fertilizers and the chemicals, it takes about 4 days to finish 1 hectare of land. But with the drones, it's just about 2 hours. So why, if somebody wants, let them rent a technology. Let him use that technology for the other farmers as well, so that the production grows, so the cycle of production can also be increased. So this is what it is. Then quote a contract farm, somebody from say Saudi Arabia wants to do contract farming here in South Africa, it's open for them. And then you have ask for a byproduct. So this is a pretty big discussion if I want to get into it. Innovate your product, payment solutions, consult our agri experts. So these are some key features of these applications. And then our social goals out of it is to reduce food wastage and then give a full dollar to the farmer. And obviously it's going to enhance the food security. As I'm just going to complete in 5 minutes. You guys can go back to your sleeps after 5 minutes. All right, so Brother Afzal was talking. Why do we need all this? I'm giving you solutions like technology, aquaculture. Why do we need all these things? So here's the big picture in the numbers. So the food consumption is about $1.27 trillion within the OIC countries. All right, so the export value is about $133 billion per year. Total food import value is about $200 billion a year, and the total intra-trade is $11 billion a year between the OIC countries. It's just $11 billion. All right. Okay. So now we are seeing everybody. Yesterday we were in the airport. We were just checking: is it halal? Is it halal? Is it halal? So in this halal industry, which is a $2 trillion market size value, how many do you think the Muslim contribution is? how many percent in this 100%, what is the stake of the Muslim? The halal industry, we as Muslims own only 7% of its stake. So the 93% of the stake is managed by somebody else, and we are going to use it under the name of halal certification. That's nice. So this is what it is. 93% is confirmed. It's controlled by others. So the halal food industry is expected to be around $1.67 trillion in 2025. All right. So this is where we stand, and this is why we need all these solutions. If we don't get into these kind of solutions, that 7% can go down, and the 93% can go up. So you guys want to be a part of it, or you guys want to be out of it? We need to decide. All right. So that's where mashallah, tabarakallah, IFS is doing a commendable job of integrating. See, you've seen the ecosystem, right? See, this ecosystem is not just designed of a thin air. All right. So it is based on the evidence of the past and the successful case studies of the past. All right. So it is integrating. Imagine a farmer is just walking into the model support centers. He is asking, okay, what can I grow this year? So the research gives him, okay, grow this year because the market is going to be really good for us. And then he grows that and takes his products, goes to the industry development pillar of the ecosystem, and he processes foods. Say, for example, he's processing wheat. So he can build dairy products out of it. Okay, Professor Hilaal will tell me that, the wheat is, organic wheat of Kazakhstan is sold, and it is again coming back to, say 200% or 300% more. The same wheat is just going out, processing, and again coming back. So we don't have that processing centers. Afzal was telling we have 0 food companies in that. So that's where it is all addressing. So this is the first kind of app. This is some glimpses of the app. It's in the development stage now. You can just see this. It's going to open doors for the millions of farmers, suppliers, and the traders. All right, so this is the glimpse about an app that I'm just showing you. This is the next generation technology, which is going to connect all the buyers and the suppliers and the farmers. All right, thank you for bearing me.
I think we are at a time now, and what you saw today about presentations from some outstanding people who have done research, these are the new diamonds, and we have to learn from them. But all this, at the same time, I just want to spend 1 minute and to say that how did we come about? I mean, where's the connection between IPSA as a college, or for that matter, Islamia as a college, or even OCAF? Where is the connection between these institutions and food security? Because sometimes we either engage in zakat, in waqf, in salah, hajj and fasting, and that kind of traditional pursuits. And if you have listened carefully to the presentations, the common denominator in each of these presentations was food security, which is really the first objective of the Sharia, Haqqul Haya, the sanctity of human life. And how did we come to that? Through Maqasid, which is the great pursuit of IPSA College. And that is where, through this process of Maqasid, we see the connectivity that Haqqul Haya, the fulfillment of organic needs, which is food and water, the responsibility and the duty of society, that is of the individual and the society to collaborate. And I've said to some of my very distinguished guests, remember the 4 golden C's. When you connect, you collaborate. When you collaborate, you comprehend. And when you comprehend, you contribute. And the golden thread for this is Maqasid. How to fulfill
the objectives of the great revelation Allah has given to us and to mankind. Hence, we are very honored to have to us this afternoon these presentations. We appreciate them very much. IPSA College is going to circulate this to each and every one of you. You're welcome to write. And now we're going to declare this session open for questions that may be raised from the floor. So Bismillah, can I have someone starting off? We have a very eminent scholar, professor, and yes, please. Wa alaikum salam.
Presentation about the app, buying and selling what you grow yourself, and the food, especially fruits, whatever it is, it's such a products which going to be rotten very fast. What if I ordered something from, let's say, from Kazakhstan, not the wheat, some fruits, and when it came not in that condition how it's on the picture. And the Kazakhstan person will say, okay, send me back. I say, the sending back is a lot of money. Normally, even we're buying from Alibaba, whatever it is, if something, we're not buying like big thing, small thing we're buying. Because if it come and it's not in that quality, what we expected, we just leave it. We're not sending back normally. How this situation will be sorted if such things will appear?
I'll answer this.
Yeah.
Can you hear my voice? It's a very good question. Jazakallah khair. Okay, this was the question when we developed the app. Okay, what are the challenges? Today, as you mentioned, Alibaba we can order, okay, and be secure. Whatever we order, it will come to us because there is something called insurance. You will pay a small amount. Similar insurance will be part of it. Initially, when we are starting, it is starting only for B2B. These will be containers. It's not B2C. End consumer cannot be accessed at the moment. Phase 2, for sure, inshallah, end consumer will be there. So there are so many technologies. When we talk about technology, for example, Indonesia, Malaysia has done a beautiful job. They developed a nanotechnology which before the transport of fruits, exotic fruits, they use this technology which gives them 15 days of extra shelf life, for example. Those kind of technologies will be used when fruits and others, so that it will reach as fresh. At the same time, through this app, it is not only as an app for payments and other things. Each country, there'll be proper offices, proper implementation teams, and they will integrate with local insurance companies, Islamic insurance companies, for example. They will ensure when you do the transaction, you'll pay a little small amount so that your product, your consignment is being insured. At the same time, there'll be local bodies, local verification teams. They will ensure, when the product is ready, as what you agreed. For example, I'll give you a small example. I live in Medina Munawwara. One of the big challenge we had around 6-7 years ago, for example, Medina is known for its dates, Tumor. Somebody says, this size is grade 1, somebody says this size is grade 1. Everyone had their own grades. This is a time agriculture ministry came into it, and they put proper regulations. They said anything around 5 grams is around grade C, anything around 7+ is B and 9+ is A, then more than 12 is a royal grade. So these kind of local involvement with the governments, with the NGOs will be there to make standardize of the product, so that what is being sold. One of the biggest challenge today, why, can we sit here, for example, order something from Kazakhstan or Sudan or Egypt or somewhere else, order a container, pay the money and be relaxed? No. Today, that trust is not there. That is one of the trust what we want to build through the ecosystem and through the app. So it will solve those problems, inshallah. Hope I answered the question.
Thank you so much. Zain?
Can I proceed? Assalamu alaikum, the esteemed panel. My name is Ikhshan Carstens and I am from the Mitchells Plain area, which is the Falls Bay coastal area. Our organization, Samba, is involved in the blue economy, which is in the ocean, as well as in the green economy, which is agriculture. But I just want to tie into the subject of aquaculture. And there is very imperative for us because there is another solution to the food security, because we know to farm takes longer than to actually cultivate fish. And I had a small discussion with Professor Muniba before this time. On our coastal area during the time of the water shortage, they had installed some desalination plants. That went just like that because there was a need for it. But our organization wanted to have a aquaculture farm on the same spot. And what we have is all this legislation and policies of the government where a community organization has to go through. We call it red tape. Some of us call it colored, white, and black tape because it is the people we deal with. They are the obstacles. So here IOFS has come to the party and has basically said they are doing certain things at a bigger scale in a faster rate. So the impediments and the challenges that we have is normally with government, and the key word is access. Access to resources, access to land, access to whatever we need to start pushing those projects and implement it. So from a private perspective, there's always more speed. From a government, it's always more haste. So how do we come about that? An organization like IOFS can come and collaborate and partner up with organizations that is local, that want to implement exactly what you are saying. Because we need you and you need us to add value. So how do we go about to link up with what we are pushing our programs, initiatives, and projects through what you have? Because the resources that you can offer to us is the same like the government, but the government will take 3 to 5 years to get things sorted out. Whereas when we communicate, and we've had that understanding with other organizations already, that the implementation part goes much quicker, because we have got a situation, what we call the poverty of now, not the poverty of the next 2 months or the next 2 years, the poverty of now. So how does it start the turnaround time? Can we look at that collaborations and partnership space, inshallah? Shukran.
Thank you, Zain. It's your turn.
The T57 that you talk about is about Muslim countries, member countries of the OIC. So where do Muslim communities in non-member countries fit in? Because that's what I think the brother was talking about as well. So maybe you can just clarify that for us as well.
Sure. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, Sheikh Sinnal Abedin, your question, if you let me, I will start from you. This T57 platform, which was kindly shown and explained by Brother Al-Bari, it is really something which is we really expecting. It will be done not only for OIC member countries. The essence is, I mean, because we are IOFS, we have to follow our statute. Our members are 57 member countries of Organization for Islamic Cooperation, but the trade you cannot limit. So there is nothing, I mean, to stop us. And like you already told it during his presentation, that all Muslim communities will be involved. I think this the structure where this all opportunity will be provided. So for those who want to participate in this very important platform, with all opportunities which this platform providing. So for South African entrepreneurs, especially dealing in halal food, I'm sure it will be open. For my second question for our colleague sitting on the top, I think I will kindly ask Afzal to answer, because some of points which you raised, and we were asking how IOFS will be involved. Actually, in that kind of activities which you was saying, most probably will think, not now, because South Africa is not member, even not observer of OIC. But I think we may, I will ask probably Afzal, Brother Afzal, to answer. Thank you.
You mentioned very important subject, blue economy. ACE technology, which presented by Brother Abdul Bari, okay, it's been 45th member of blue economy, for example, listed in Australia. Okay, these kind of technologies could implement in those areas, okay, outside OIC countries. Okay, other programs for sure has to be, the ecosystem will be completely exclusive for OIC countries.
Itself is about 6 or 7 years behind on delivery stage. Okay, Mal, for that. Like I said, Professor Maniba might be able to also contribute on the blue economy, because our organization is in the blue economy, which is to do anything with sustainable livelihood out of the ocean. But the implementation of the programs that was initiated or brought up in the Pakiza movement, the Pakiza paper, which is a national initiative, is just not reaching down to the provinces, which is related to the ocean side, which is coastal suburbs or cities. And so again, it is there, the paper, but how can we get to the implementation stage? Because the longer it takes to be implemented, the further down we are going as a community and as a nation where food security and food diversity is concerned.
Shukran for your question. I think that, you know, the blue economy policy of Operation Pakisa, which means hurry up, was already developed in 2014. And that goes aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and it paved the way, the ocean economy for South Africa. And initially at that particular phase, small scale and communities were not necessarily a key factor in the strategic planning of Operation Pakisa. It's only since 2022 that there were open invitation to have input into the master plan that they've developed for Operation Pakisa. The blue economy definitely focus on oil, gas, large-scale aquaculture, and marine protected areas are a big factor for the South African economy. Also fisheries plays a big, large-scale fisheries plays a big role in the Operation Pakisa. In terms of the implementation, it's very difficult at this platform to kind of talk about government, local South African implementation of policies. I think it is, and for communities to engage in that level. So I think that kind of political policy complexities is a lot of, you know, where in-house, unless some of people around the table are friends with the minister to be able to fast track some. And you never know what the case may be. But I would also say that, you know, technology can be an advantage, but it can also be exclusionary to many. And I think that is something that I have looked at and researched, that when technology, the first takers of technology is often men. Women are excluded. And technology also creates that you want to have the fish as fast as possible from the ocean to the plate. And that also means whatever activities that was part in the community of the cleaning and the processing, all of that disappears. And that means that the livelihoods and the food and all of that disappear. So I do think when trying to move to these platforms and connections, it is so important that we strengthen the base at the community level and the food security at the community level. But I'm saying not only that, that is important, that there must also be a progression, that those who are doing well to be able to kind of trade locally, but also trade nationally, trade across borders, and trade internationally with the group that is mentioned. I hope I've answered your question in a long way, as we normally do.
More than sufficient. Shukran, Jazakallah.
Right. Before I take one more question, I just want to answer Zain's question he raised about what is the status of a Muslim minority in a non-Muslim country in relation to the OIC. And I think that's where we need to know where we stand. And to the best of my knowledge, our government's application has been there for the last 25 to 30 years. It's still there. But there is an objection for geopolitical reasons, which has nothing to do with us, but it's there again. And I seriously believe that now, with the new order emerging, a multipolar order which is irreversible, there is no way that that order is going to revert to the old order. And therefore, there will be a tremendous degree of encouragement, especially with BRICS plus 11, and that the South African community, in collaboration with the government, renew its application. And with the help of the OIC, and particularly with the IOFS, which is headquartered in Afghanistan, at least in Kazakhstan, we will be able to get some progress in that direction. And I hope those in the government are listening carefully of the importance of food security for ourselves in this country, and also with increasing weaponization of food that is going to be intensified, at least for the coming decade. So that being the position, I'd like to take one more question, because we want to close this session by 3:45. So is there one more question from anyone on the floor? Yes, that brother there.
Hi, afternoon. I'm Nigel Skeepers from African Agri Market. And our motto in our company is we close the gap between farmers in Africa and the rest of the world. Now, my question to the T57 platform, is your payment system a multi-payment system? Are you only focusing on the international trade currency of the dollar? Do you accept financial instruments on your payment system like SBLCs, letters of credits? Are you open on payment for if our farmer wants it to be paid in Botswana Pula? Are you a multinational payment system platform when it comes to currencies?
I'll answer that. It's a very good question. Okay, we have still have a discussion on this. One thing is, for sure, it will be a multi-payment system. It will be an option for traders. For example, a farmer, a buyer, they want to have their own payment. They don't need to go through us. They could go by themselves. They can pay. Okay, only we will help them if required. For example, some countries, they'll have challenges on transferring and those things. That is a time we will come into it, and it will be multi-different, and even fintech solutions will be there. Bullion trading will be there through gold. Real gold trading also could be done through that. It will be open for multi-trading, like Bitcoins and others will be open for that. Not only focus on dollar and those things. Especially these moments, we don't know where is dollar going into.
Right. Okay, no, Professor, you have any? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My mind is just more of a practical nature. Where do we go from here, for example? How do we make the necessary connections so that minority groupings can find themselves within the IOFS sector, so to speak? And then, but then also bearing in mind that despite being minority, we form part of a larger nation, regionally, continentally. So we serve all communities. After all, as Muslims, our target should not be at Muslim communities only, but should be far beyond, because we serve the human society in whichever way. Thank you.
Zain, there is an announcement that you wish to make, and we're delighted that you come over and make the announcement. Now, just before he makes the announcement, we're going to be concluding with a vote of thanks by Taj Atlikar, and then there is a special request. I ask each and every one of you not to leave the auditorium for the reason that we're going to take one large group photograph. And that's very important. It's nice for you to know that in this moment of history, you were there. So don't lose that opportunity. For convenience, these members will assemble in front. You will get at the back as many as you can, or the other way around. We'll ask the photographer to take it from this way whilst you are seated there. Either way, that will be a photograph. Now,
can you have a minute?
This is the last question. May you answer? Okay.
There's a question?
Yeah, it was a
there is
question.
a question we didn't
Yeah,
answer.
it was a question.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. What is the way forward? You was asking me. And I'm sure with all our team and our dear colleagues from Al Mukarrama, we have a vision. And as our proposal to our brothers and sisters, to Muslim minorities here in South Africa, of course, first to cooperate with us on our projects, especially as you mentioned, continentally. Africa is very important. Actually, I prepared a presentation, but because it will take longer time, it's good that I will just briefly tell you. So we have African Food Security Initiative. We have launched a number of projects in some of African countries. It would be our pleasure if you may consider our joint activities within those programs and projects in such countries like Uganda, in Djibouti, in Nigeria. Niger, unfortunately, we're facing a big problem. I hope that situation will be soon resolved peacefully. Mauritania, Libya, Tunisia, all of these countries are working with us very actively. We have a number of other countries which we will work on, especially in Africa. You also mentioned about global participation, how you can feel yourself a part of our activities. We would like to support this, your intention, your NIA. And in this regard, like our colleagues just mentioned about a very important activity or project or program, we call it, it's IOFS fund, very easy. IOFS funds, a special unique fund, which inshallah we're going to launch and domiciled in Qatar. So would be very happy to invite our colleagues, businessmen, to cooperate on that platform, which will give a lot of good opportunities. Just follow us and keep in touch with us. So that's our proposal for further cooperation. Thank you.
And especially in this fund, this will allow private sector to participate, invest, and this is not as a NGO or something, this is with a high returns, because if you saw our ecosystem, in this ecosystem there'll be a lot of middlemen will be removed from there, so it has a very good returns on investments for especially private sectors and others. In this fund there'll be like sovereign funds will be investing, financial institutes, other funds will be participating. At the same time, it is open for private sector to participate in this. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much. And now, Zain.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, this has really been a mind-blowing and very inspirational session, the whole morning actually and afternoon, with all the brilliant presentations that have been done. And I think that few people in the audience here have also been inspired. And the announcement really is about setting up a small fund, and a commitment has been made for 1 million rand, domiciled in South Africa, okay, not in Qatar. So inshallah, this is going to be managed by OCAF South Africa as well as IPSA. And I think that between the two parties, there will be some details that will have to be worked out as to how this fund is going to be managed and how it's going to be distributed, particularly for farming and fisheries. So it will enable small farmers and small fishers or fishermen and fisherwomen to actually implement and grow their businesses, inshallah. So that's it. Jazakallah.
Well, there you have a very meaningful contribution. IPSA likes to walk the talk. And that's where OCAF joins us. And I think this is an outstanding beginning for 1 million rand to the funds of IPSA and OCAF to promote this. And of course, hopefully we will meet again tomorrow with our guests to work out some further details and how we can identify the roadmap for the future. So remember what our Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam had said, ibadah constitutes 10 parts, 9 parts of which is trade. And that is what we're doing. So now I call Taj. Taj. Presentation.
While Uncle Taj is getting ready, we've just got a token of appreciation and commemoration on this to hand over to our esteemed guest, Professor Yarlan, if you would accept it on behalf of IPSA and OCAF South Africa, maybe. And while he's accepting it, maybe the OIFS can meet our contribution of 1 million rand.
MashaAllah. Well, that's why I keep saying that when you connect, you collaborate, you comprehend, and you contribute. And this is what has happened. It wasn't planned, it wasn't, solicited. It came from the hearts of the people, and that's important. Taj, would you do your duty now?
Shukran, Hafiz Abu Bakr. Good afternoon and greetings of peace to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Taj Akleka, and I have been entrusted with a portfolio of strategic relations at the International Peace College South Africa, IPSA. As you've heard, I've been honored with the task, and quite a difficult one. It's an assignment which is extremely challenging, and that is to pass a vote of thanks here this afternoon. Professor Yarlan Bai Daulat, Director General of the Islamic Organization for Food Security, and Honorable Ambassador Daulat Yember Diev, who is the Director of Country Operations for Islamic Organization for Food Security, the leadership of Al Mukarrama, the leadership of the Center for Security and Food, and leadership for the Center of Food Security at the University of the Western Cape, Professor Julian May, also Professor Muniba, thank you so much for your presence here. We acknowledge you. The University of the Western Cape's Director of Institutional Development, Professor Anesh Singh, presenters, panelists, alliance partners, Jamiatul Qurra, Islamia College, Medina Institute, Al Ansar Foundation, and International Peace College, South Africa, and OCOF, South Africa. Respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon to each and everyone. All protocol is fully observed. True to say, this conference could never have taken place without the attention to detail of each and everyone present here this afternoon, especially those who have stayed for the last leg. On behalf of IPSA and its alliance partners, I beg your indulgence in allowing me to express my and our deepest gratitude and appreciation to each and everyone. To those who have traveled from abroad, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and making this event a global success. For the record, this particular event and this conference has been beamed to 57 countries around the world. This shows the commitment towards food security and addressing the institution of food insecurity, that it is a global priority emanating from the confines of this wonderful auditorium to the furthest corners of the world. There have been many who have tirelessly worked and labored around the clock behind the scenes to make this event possible. To each I say an enormous thank you, shukran jazilan, and may you be blessed, and may your work be blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reward you. Whilst we are closing this conference with a vote of thanks, a special note of appreciation to the leadership of and the board of Islamia College, especially to the driving force, two people, Nazir Osman, who is also IPSA Deputy Chair, and of course, Mr. Abdul Razak. We thank the entire board, and I think they deserve a round of applause. They've made the venue available, and for the record, the matriculants were writing in the big hall where we had lunch. They pulled out all the stops to relocate for examination purposes. This was unprecedented, but they did it for the love of this wonderful event. Thank you so much to Mr. Osman. Thank you so much to Mr. Razak and all the team. The real work has now begun, and as we bring the recommendations of this conference to fruition, this particular theme has been one of a kind, probably the first that has been seriously addressed on African soil. And so it is the responsibility of each and every one of us to ensure that food security remains a high priority in order that we address the inequalities in so many ways that so many countries and so many millions of people around the world are subjected to the denying of this basic human right. History will judge us, ladies and gentlemen, by our efforts to make the world a better place. So, let your names be recorded in the annals of history as among those who put their shoulder to the wheel to address this basic human right of food for all and ensuring the world becomes a better place. Thank you so much. On behalf of IPSA and its alliance partners, I reiterate our heartfelt appreciation for your presence, and may the Almighty always continue to bless you. we wish you a safe journey home. And for those traveling on overseas, we wish you a pleasant travel home, and may you return again and again to elevate the discussions that we have had, and may we all perpetuate the intent of why this conference was held in the first place. Last but by no means least, the call came and we all jumped to attention. Hafiz Abu Bakr, I'd like to pay special tribute. It was the initiative of the chairperson of IPSA, Hafiz Abu Bakr, Advocate Hafiz Abu Bakr Mohammed Senior Counsel. I'm going to add 2 words to that as prefix. It's now going to be His Excellency, Hafiz Abu Bakr. So to all the panelists, especially those that kind of did all the research, to Professor Muhammad Haroon, who was instrumental in leading the discussion, in being the lead principal, and to each and everyone that participated. Shukran jazilan, thank you so much, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And so we invoke Allah Almighty's blessings in concluding this.
Hang on a minute.
Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
There's Shukran Hafizab. Finally, Awqaf South Africa. They really came to the party. Like everyone else, they saw to the logistics and to all the preparations. So to Mikhail Collier and Hassanain Abdullah and Shireen Arifdin, I think it is, where is she? She's outside somewhere at the table. We want to pay tribute, and to the Honorable Mr. Zainul Abidin, the CEO of Awqaf South Africa, and for the generous gesture, which we really, really appreciate. You really set the tone, Mr. Uncle Zainul Abidin. Once again, shukran to everyone. Thank you so much. If I've left anyone out, I ask for your most sincere pardon. Shukran jazilan to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.